Good evening. I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order, August 10th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Let the record show that members present, Kathleen McNamara, Suzanne McAvoy, Yolanda Lopez-Bearden, and Jamie Miller, and myself. Yolanda, if you could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, I will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before we really get into the meeting, I just want to take kind of a point of privilege here. I think there's been a misunderstanding at two of the meetings where they were actually public meetings, and that was when comments were asked for from the public. Since we've started the virtual meetings during the spring of last year, we have not had a call to the public. And I just wanted to clear up any confusion that there was, that was a public meeting, an open public meeting for budget. And I just wanted to make sure that I got that cleared up. And with that, it is recommended the governing board approve the regular agenda form consistent with board policy BEDB and temporarily suspend governing board policy with which this agenda may be inconsistent. And if I could I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the regular agenda form consistent with board policy BEDV and temporarily suspend governing board policy with which this agenda may be inconsistent.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Kathy?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
Jamie?
Aye.
Suzanne?
Aye.
I am also an aye. Show that it approved unanimously. Administrative reports. Item number 2.1, food services report.
Pleased to introduce Mrs. Cindy Cabanilla, who is going to give us the food service report. And I'll just take a moment to thank our food services team for all the food service delivery they've done for our children, have really taken away that anxiety for families and met some real important needs. So thank you, Cindy and team.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Chef. So we understand it's a very tight agenda tonight, so we'll keep it short. If you do have any questions, please stop us. I do have Mrs. Conti with us tonight. She is the Director of Area of Operations, and she'll be assisting with the presentation.
Hi guys, I think I am unmuted at this point and I do see the presentation up on the screen. I am not sure how to click through the presentation in Google Slides, or should we just have a pretend click? I think maybe IT is clicking through the presentation for us. So we are going to give the school board update. I've worked with Cindy over the past few years. I've been with SFE for 9 years, but I am a new DAO for your district. So I did just want to give a little background. My background is truly in education. I'm a teacher, a high school biology teacher, wound up in food service, but I am excited where I'm at. I love being with SFE, still in schools, just in a different caliber. So if we can click to the next slide. I know I need to be conscious of your time. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is Cindy and surveys. So Cindy has put surveys in the forefront this past year. She did surveys at all 6 sites across all schools, and our goal was to really create a student-driven menu. You can click. So all of you have gotten this presentation, so I'm going to kind of condense what everything says, but K through 3, they have a lot of favorites that you can imagine. Pizza, nuggets, smoothies are a huge one. They do make them fresh in the kitchen. Curly fries, cinnamon rolls. One of the biggest challenges they wanted us to do was to provide more fresh strawberries on the bar. So Cindy has made sure that her upcoming menus do include this behind the bar for students to access. And then their wish list was they would love to do a build your own ice cream type of bar. Obviously, that might not be something we can do in the NSLP program, but it is a great idea for maybe if we did a classroom party or something along those lines, if we held a contest in that way. So 4th through 6th grade, same thing. You can imagine nachos, tater tots, orange chicken. They actually love the smoothies too. Across the board, everyone's loving smoothies. Also, they'd like to see more of variety on the salad bar and possibly some more exotic stuff, mandarin oranges. The students have gotten exposed to some different fruits and veggies over the past year with the farmers markets that Cindy's done. So it's been really fun to get to see them try things and actually start requesting different things that we may not have had on that salad bar before. 7th and 8th grade, they like meatball subs, spicy chicken sandwiches. I feel like the older they get, the spicier the food becomes. They wish that we had Panda Express. And they also wish we had Papa John's, which we always explain that we understand, but we do have regulations. So we are listening. We will try and accommodate things that still meet our program. So overall, everyone was really happy that their voices are being heard. And the reason why this kind of is really in the forefront for Cindy is simply because we want the students to craft the program. If the students are crafting the program and they feel like they're getting the input they deserve, they're more likely to feel like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna eat today. They're items that I really did want to see on the menu, and Cindy is actually listening. So it's a really important part for us. And you can click to the next one. Cindy, I'll let you take this one. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. So grants this year, every year, they're super important to all of us, especially food service. We don't always have the funds to purchase the new equipment. This year, we did apply for the National School Lunch Equipment Grant, and we were funded $64,329.10. That went all towards new equipment for our kitchens, such as reach-in coolers, new milk boxes, hot boxes. So the funds went towards that equipment for our kitchen.
So one of the things that I know in working with the district over the last year that was really important was food waste, and then students being able to utilize some food maybe that are at risk or in need with food insecurities over the weekend. So Cindy and I have continued to explore grant options for programs like that. Right now, there is not any available. But
excuse me, Miss Conti,
Yes.
I apologize about this. I don't mean to interrupt you guys. So I think we're having technical issues. John, what I'm being told is that the public is not able to access the YouTube meeting.
They missed the first part. They're finally in, is the Facebook posts that are going on.
We don't have an obligation to broadcast live from the beginning. This will be posted afterwards. So it's
Okay.
a board pleasure to continue the board meeting and just come here forth or any information that may have been lost.
Perfect. So in working with the district over the past year with Cindy, we realized that how important it is to make sure that we are providing options for food insecure families. We will continue to explore grant options for programs like this. We have also gotten on the St. Mary's Food Bank wait list for their backpack program. So we have our fingers crossed that we will be able to start implementing that at some point this year, which is really exciting. It's non-perishables that go home. We work with on-site teams to determine eligibility of students, and it's a really great thing. Families get to have food that is non-perishable and food that kiddos can make with their family that is very easy and also nutritious at the same time. So we will keep working towards the ultimate goal of being able to make sure we are encompassing all students with their food and nutrition needs, including outside of some of our school days. You can click to the next slide.
All right, on this slide, we have events that we have done with our students. We do have a roving chef that goes on at all of our sites each year. We also have farmers markets that are presented throughout lunch at each one of the sites. And as far as promotions, we offer spooky salad bar for Halloween, all green salad bar for Jim Henson's birthday, and sweetheart salad bar for February. So these are some of the promotions that are offered yearly to the students with something going on each month. We can click to the next one.
All right, so I'm going to jump in and just kind of walk you through a little bit on this slide. I know you guys, like I said, have received the demonstration already, but I want to give Cindy a bit of kudos. If you guys can see, this is showing the participation increases over every single month. So she did not have any month where she did not increase participation. Her breakfast participation, as you can see, thankful for the grant funds, allowing some different ways to get breakfast in the hands of students. You can see that breakfast participation really was impacted over the past year. We definitely saw some growth over lunch, but it leads us to kind of want a little more. We can see what we can do when we offer students things in a bit of a different way and start thinking a little outside the box. You can see that in us looking at those numbers and looking at lunch numbers, Cindy and I will craft a plan, hopefully, fingers crossed, we all know, eventually we will be back in school. We will craft a plan to really focus and drive not only the breakfast numbers this year, but also those lunch numbers as well. And you can click. So COVID participation, another kudos to Cindy and her team. They have done an amazing job with the community. So since they started serving COVID meals, which was in March till the end, they actually served a total of 119,508 meals to the family and community. It was amazing. Amazing to get to see the smiling faces and the excitement when they came to pick it up. Amazing to see such a hardworking team with dedication show up day in and day out, and really just understand that the impact they were making on these families was so great that Cindy did not deal with the call-out situations. It was really an amazing thing to watch the team and the community come together to provide this. Click. Cindy, I'll let you take this one.
Thank you. So now we move on to some of the different ways that we have offered meals and how we're going to offer meals with the different scenarios that we have as far as learning. So for these last few months, we have been offering the grab and go carts at each of the sites where the families can just stop by at a certain time of the day and pick up the breakfast and the lunch together for their child. As we move on to this school year, we've started with that same model. And then with the changes being made, we plan on breakfast on site to stay as the same with the grab and go carts where kids can just stop by, pick up their breakfast and then head to the classroom. That way they can eat indoors and at their desk, practice the social distancing. And then lunch on site, the model would be where either the children can come in and pick up their lunch, eat in the cafeteria while at the same time practicing the social distancing, or grabbing the lunch to take back to their classroom. So a combination of both, making sure that we have enough space to accommodate for all the kids that will be returning. And at the same time, we will be offering and continue to offer those meals through the cart for the students that remain with the online learning. Goals for 2021. So continue to offer these meals with the different scenarios we have, making sure that we're keeping everybody's safety in mind. Always increasing participation every year by listening to the students as far as what they would like, by surveys, having those events for them and getting feedback from them, and continue to do the monthly promotions that kind of keeps the kids excited as far as the lunch meals in our cafeterias. Do we have any questions?
Thank you guys for everything that you guys do. You guys are kind of don't get the credit that you should. especially during the times that we're in right now. Cindy, the 119,000 meals is phenomenal. So thank you very much for everything that you guys do for our district.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We really appreciate you giving us the time.
Item 2.2, Administrative Report, Opening of Schools and NTO. Dr. Schuff.
Mrs. Camp will provide us a perspective of opening of schools from educational services and our learning perspectives.
Thank you, Dr. Schuff. Good evening, Mr. President, governing board members. If one of you could just let me know that you see my screen, that would be great.
Not yet.
Not yet.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Well, it is my honor to present to you tonight the preparation and training that our new teachers, as well as our returning teachers, received in order to effectively open our schools this year. As a goal for educational services, it is important that our teachers, staff, and leaders have the opportunity to attend relevant professional development and training. We started first with our new teacher orientation, and although our initial planning began with these 5 goals in mind, 4 of which goals were to maintain success in the area, in multiple areas, and then our 5th goal was an improvement goal. Many things changed prior to new teacher orientation. And a couple of things that changed that we have done in the past collectively with our governing board, presenting great food. That was a big change for us with our new teacher orientation. And we also knew that we needed to beef up some of that time with our curriculum resources. And we had to change our format into a hybrid format, focusing first and foremost on physical safety of our new teachers returning. We had 36 new hires come and join the Liberty family this year. It took a lot of collaboration to pull off our big goals in a new way, and everyone pitched in. We had an increase in site leadership support. Superintendent Dr. Schuff did welcome with a video. You see that in our picture. We did also visit each of our school sites and provide goodie bags. Ed Services did that. We had virtual choice PD. All of our teachers received Google Classroom training, and our amazing technology department did a roadshow to ensure that all of our new teachers were provided with a laptop and device in order to get what they needed for technology this school year. From day one, our new hires clearly stated that they felt welcome and expressed the gratitude for collaborative time and to meet with other staff members, as well as being provided a safe place and a safe format to work and meet with each other. Throughout the week, our team contributions led to people continuing to feel welcome, safe, and prepared for instruction in our new setting and platform. And we were excited to see the appreciation of just an all hands on deck approach under the guidance of Carrie Jones. And one day in between, we welcomed our returning teachers back from summer, and we had that begin on July 30th, and it concluded on August 4th, just the day before school started. So a couple of goals that we had for our returning teachers: we wanted them to feel very welcome back to their sites. We wanted to provide guidance on an enhanced distance learning plan this year, which included live instruction. We wanted support to be support for the implementation of our newly adopted written curriculum. And then we wanted to also ensure differentiation for our most vulnerable learners, such as kindergarten, first grade, and special education. It was important that during our returning teacher week, we were really balancing the what, which is the content of live instruction, and the how, which is the enhancement of technology resources and integration. And a huge foundational component within our returning teacher week training was the social emotional component, not only for our teachers, but preparing for the social emotional learning for our students that were soon to join us. Our focus of each day really, again, balanced that what and how. So day one really was our site welcome, a lot of social emotional learning and checking in with our educators, talking about our curriculum that we would be guaranteeing for our students coming in the fall, and then a little bit of the how, introduction of technology integration. Day two was very, very heavy with content specific to our teachers. Day three really talked about the how. How will we deliver that content in live instruction? And I'll get into some examples of that. And then day four, we wanted to make sure that we were offering some choice to our teachers so that they felt that they could go to sessions that met their particular needs. Brace yourselves, 85 sessions were delivered in 4 days. That's a lot of training for our teachers. And of those 85 sessions of professional development training, we had 13 differentiated groups. It was important that we were meeting the needs of our special education teachers, our psychologists, our counselors, our self-contained resource preschool, K-1, instructing our youngest learners, our champs, our PE, art, music, band, and Spanish, all content areas, ELA, math, science, and social studies. And then we did have a differentiated group for our online teachers within the Edgenuity platform. Let me show you a little bit about what this looked like. So here is an example of how teachers actively and remotely were participating in trainings. This is a sample of a Jamboard where teachers generated Post-it notes regarding how they as teachers would take care of themselves socially and emotionally in our new modality of school. Again, here are examples of social emotional check-ins for students at various ages. Here's an example of an instructional coach delivering a live sample lesson. It was important that we modeled engagement for students as well as relevant and rigorous content being delivered. We had amazing teacher leaders that provided sample lessons in ELA and math at various grade levels so that teachers could see and feel what students would be receiving on the student end. Here are two of our teacher leaders collaborating on lesson planning and delivering their sample 4th grade ELA lesson. Here's another teacher leader and 40 plus teachers participating in a sample 2nd grade math lesson. This is the same 2nd grade math lesson and an example of an engagement tool in a math lesson, embedding technology as an interactive number line for making an estimate with a justification of student thinking. Here's an example of the use of Google Forms and Illuminate teacher-generated assessments being used as an exit ticket so that we can measure student understanding at the end of a lesson so that our grades can be accurate and reflect student growth. Our results from our teachers were analyzed from the PD evaluations, and here are some things that surfaced. They felt that there was ample time for collaboration. They were thankful for us showing the how of live instruction. And they know and we know there is so much to learn in regards to technology and technology integration, but they were very appreciative of the choices that were offered. Some of our next steps include increasing our collaborative time for planning synchronous instruction. Again, synchronous is live or same instruction together. Another next step is increasing guidance for planning from our adopted curriculum. And then finally, increasing opportunities to learn and apply the technology tools in our distance learning modality. And with that, I am going to pause, Dr. Sheff, because I don't believe I'm going to go on unless you would like me to turn it over to you.
Yes, I'll take it from here. So just a few more updates on the opening of school. I'm going to go a little bit broader than just enrollment, but I can start there. We currently have 3,830 students enrolled. We know that that number will drop every year after the 10-day drops, and more families have completed their withdrawal paperwork when they've moved away someplace else and enrolled in their next school. So that number should come down. We took a count today for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for any students who had not shown up yet to try to get a picture of potentially how many could be withdrawing at the kind of the high end. And we're right around 230 students. But we do have one school that hadn't yet populated in there, so it could be a little bit higher than that. Out of all of those, just a tremendous shout out to our technology team. They have been driving this 7 days a week, 24/7, just doing whatever they can to get our students up and running and helping our families with troubleshooting anything that they might have. And at Rainbow Valley, I think we all knew that was going to be our most challenging area due to the internet accessibility there. We have 134 families that still are lacking internet devices, access to the internet, so needing of hotspots. We are ordering more, so I think really we probably got that number down to about 65 that we are currently ordering. And in the meantime, we've offered some support for those families to have access at the school site to be able to get internet in the meantime. Then if you look at where we were last May, we were at 3,668. If you take off the 230 and change of who are currently enrolled, we're really off only by about 60 to 70 students from last year. So we're hopeful that we will come in balanced with where we left. Typically, if this had been a normal year, we would have seen some growth over the last May, but I think we will take a maintain and be cheering about that. Mostly what we're concerned about right now is that all of our children have access to learning. So whether that means that they need to get appropriately placed in whatever school they are going to, even if it's outside of our district, because we care about their learning, that they are effectively on whatever learning option they have selected for their child, and they all have access to the learning. So that's been our first priority in these first 3 days of school. Now we are shifting to now checking in at a deeper level, for example, with things like special education, 504s. All of the teachers should have already had access to those IEPs, but now we're at a position of starting to check to see how our students are actually performing in this new environment, and in the process of just likely scheduling IEPs with every child that's on one to make sure that they are actually served appropriately in this environment. A little bit extra information on staffing. Staffing at this time of year is always a time when you're looking to see where did it come in higher than you expected? Where is it lower? Is there a need to shift staffing around in some way? Have we grown so much that we need to actually add a teacher to accommodate the class sizes? So right now I would tell you that we do have, I'd say, 4 strongly watch classrooms that as soon as we have a sense of where we're at with enrollment, we can look to hire for some of those classes. We do have 4 vacancies in general education at this time, and we have 4 vacancies in special education at this time, and all those positions are posted. 2 of our general education vacancies are filled with long-term substitutes, so we have teachers there right here and now, and the other vacancies are resulting in larger class sizes, and some unusual coverage that we're doing with special education to meet the needs of those children until we can get some coverage, either through hiring or special education, perhaps even some contract service if need be. And let's see if I've kind of covered most of my notes there. Any other questions you would have about the start of school?
So Ms. Camp, I'm just curious. I know that you surveyed last year versus in this year how they feel about it, and I know I'm sure they're very appreciative. But how has it been to execute what they learned? Have we checked with them? Did we prepare them appropriately for what the real world is? Does that make sense, that question?
When you say them, you're speaking to teachers, correct?
The teachers, yes. That is who we gave the, sorry, that's who we gave the professional development to, right?
Yeah.
The 85 sessions?
Yes. So we have not yet reached out to survey them again for the first 3 days of school. However, our principals have been giving us feedback on how things are going in the real world, as you mentioned, Ms. McNamara. I will be very honest, this is not what any of them have signed up for or thought that they were getting into. And so there have been some teachers who are thriving in the distance learning, and others who are taking a little bit more time to get used to how to effectively deliver lessons with the integration of technology. And we've been giving our teachers grace to do that. And we will support them with additional training that they feel is needed in a very timely manner.
Yes, I would say that I just couldn't be prouder of our teachers and our principals for what they've taken on. This is a very big difference of what the expectation is and what their own desire is to make a stronger difference with children's learning. Last year, it was primarily Google Classroom based, where they would do classroom assignments, minimal Google Meets and access to the teachers to interact. And this year, their children are accountable for their learning and for attendance, accountable for their learning, for the time they spend with their teachers interacting. And what we're really hoping to be launching this week and getting even stronger with is when we move into some small groups with the children. So in that situation, the teachers can more readily see the skill level, the competency, the degree they're attaining, their mastery with the sub-skills that they're learning. So we're really proud of our teachers. The other thing I would do is just give a big shout out to our principals. On July 10th, we asked parents to share back with us what option they would want in learning. As to be expected, parents struggled with that decision. Weren't able to do that by July 10th. So our principals were still getting up to the first day of school, and they'll probably tell me even after the first day of school, parents just now responding and letting us know what it is they would want for their children. And then from there, principals had to rebuild their master schedules, reassign staffing, or reassign students to come up with this puzzle that just really did fit very well together, but somehow they've still made it happen. So I'm really proud of their work in really accomplishing just about the impossible.
So I just want to clarify, my question wasn't to embarrass or question the teachers at all. It is definitely a skill. And we don't hire for that skill. So I absolutely understand. I just want to make sure that sometimes theory of teaching something theoretically versus real life, it happens all the time in adult training. You teach it, and then you find out when they go to, in my case, a construction dock, well, they'll even say, well, that's what they train you, but that's not real life. So I'm just trying to make sure we have a method to ensure that we help them get that skill. because parents, board members, and children didn't sign up for this either. So it's everybody's kind of in the same boat. It's not just the teachers. I can tell you horror stories in my own home. And yes, sorry, Dave, I was the last minute parent Friday before you had to make schedules. So yes, I understand.
So I would also say that we made a big change from last year, and that was completely based on the feedback we received from our parents and from our teachers about what worked, what didn't work, what should we do differently. So we crafted that plan, we've enacted that plan, but that doesn't mean that that plan is going to remain exactly as it stands today. So we are 4 days into school now. By the end of this week, our parents and our teachers can expect a short survey just for them to share back with us what's working, what's not working, what else can we further do to improve, and where we can see some modifications that we can make, we will do so. So whether that means it's additional training or additional coaching now that they're actually trying it with real kids, whether that is how we are scheduling things, is it how we are actually assigning things in Google Classroom? So many different aspects we can listen to learn what to do better with. And so we will do that. We're not going to take a long time to make adjustments. We're going to do it quickly.
And the agility is really, I think we've spoken a little bit in length earlier today about being nimble and being a nimble organization. And so I know a lot of times you like to try something and pilot it for a long period of time, and we don't have that ability, in my opinion. Again, that's daily operation, I understand, but I'm looking at it not just from a board member, but as a parent, as well as an employee. It just doesn't matter. You put yourself in that situation regardless what industry you're in, and you're asked to do a whole new skill set you don't have. You don't have a lot of time to wait weeks and weeks. So that's just so that I set the basis of why I asked that. It definitely is not to point fingers.
Does anyone have any other questions or comments? So I just wanted to congratulate all the principals. I know that the lift that this board has asked of you, probably at first you all thought they want us to do and this much more, right? Talking to people in the district, just as I'm moving around, going to a grocery store, to the hardware store, and just seeing different people that I've recognized and getting into a conversation with them over the weekend, and even earlier today, they've all said that they can't believe how much better it is from where the spring was to where we are now. And that really the kind of one only complaint that they had was something that is completely out of our hands, and that was broadband width. That sometimes things will drop off or things will freeze up as they happen in our board meetings monthly. So big kudos out to you principals. I know you guys haven't heard from us too much lately, but very, very much appreciated your guys' leadership with all the teaching staff into this new way of teaching. So thank you very much. Item number 3, Governing Board Report. 3.1, Governing Board Update. Anyone have anything that they would like to share with the board as an update?
I have just one item that is available to you guys. I can send you the links. I was asked to participate in a rebroadcast of NCSL's virtual meeting series on education. and particularly the June 16th guidance for reopening schools in the fall was very interesting. And you'll be happy to know that everything that Dr. Sarah Lee, who is from the CDC and actually in charge of giving guidance to reopen schools, everything that she is recommending, the 4 pillars, our administration is doing. Without a doubt, it's very spot on. And then Randy Weingartner was the other speaker. She's the president of the American Federation of Teachers. And the one point that I'd like to share is, and I hadn't thought of it kind of in this exact way, is not only is this a health crisis, but the schools are being asked to, for years, have been asked to deal with a injustice crisis as well as a social economical crisis in education. And this health crisis is causing a bigger impact in those 2 areas. And so she was just a big advocate of getting kids back in school because teachers sometimes are the difference between life and death for those students. And I just never thought about increasing the economic injustice as well as the justice injustice. Those are my words, not hers. She's much more eloquent speaker than I am. So I do have those links for you and be happy to share them. I thought it was just very interesting. There was also another one regarding around the world, education around the world and how they are dealing with COVID. So this whole series was on COVID and education. There was also a KTR podcast that I do not have a link to, but it was specifically on the teen lifelines here in Arizona, and they are increased significantly in the month of July. With the children being away from those additional sources. The largest increase was 11% increase in concerns with family issues. And in that the subgroup was the LGBTQ community has the most calls because they just don't have a resource to deal with some issues at home, and depression and anxiety top the list. These are both text and phone calls, and it is local here, Phoenix. And it just proves that our teachers are essential. And we need to do what we can do to get them back in the lives of these children. So that's my 2 cents.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to say a thank you to our principals and our teachers. I was very impressed with what we saw. I know that it didn't go out without glitches. There were some things, but I was impressed on how prepared, how well organized, and how enthusiastic our teachers were when our kids got on. I'm sure that they are stressed out. I'm sure they're worrying about a million other things, but it did not come through on the screen. I saw, a kindergarten classroom, a 3rd grade classroom, and a few 7th grade classrooms, and across the board, they just had such a positive attitude that it was hard for the kids not to be excited just to see them and that energy. And doesn't mean that I'm sure that there were frustrations and there were lots of things, little glitches that went wrong, but it was, I thank them for that positive attitude, because I know that it couldn't be easy, and I know this isn't any easy task. So as a parent, as a board member, I really appreciate that effort and determination that they had.
Anyone else? Yolanda, Jamie?
There's a big thanks to everybody too. It felt like a normal school year almost, except it was all virtual. Picking up my son's laptop, their short line, quick service. It was better than Chick-fil-A's drive-through. We were in and out. So it's good. Just thank you, because I know I didn't see behind the scenes, and I don't think a lot of the parents do. And then the meet the teacher night too. It was scheduled. It was communication was sent out early enough to block out the calendar, and it just, aside from being virtual, it felt like a normal school year. And I know that you know, my family appreciated that, and I hope others did too. So big thanks to everybody.
Yolanda, did you have anything?
No.
Yeah, just to kind of build off like Suzanne and Jamie are saying, that I got to sit in Friday with my daughter's class, and it was very surprising just how, I mean, how smooth. I mean, I don't mean that in the wrong way, but just really how smooth the class actually went all day. From listening to my wife, you know, that kind of a little bit, the kids were a little bit kind of all over the place those first couple days. And then, you know, which is, you know, first day of school and everyone's excited, right? But then when I watched on Friday, I was pleasantly surprised just how focused the little ones were, third grade class, with really just getting after it. You know, there was a couple hiccups, and that the kids just waited patiently, and you know that the class resumed shortly thereafter and just picked right up where they had left off. So I mean, just a huge thank you to the teachers, to the principals again, not as a board member, but as a parent in the district. Just, you guys are just picking it up and just going with it in stride. It doesn't seem like anything is bothering you. And I can tell you that I think that that is showing, and it's coming through to the kids also. I really do. That I think that that helps in the teaching part of it. So thank you very much. Item number 4, consent agenda. Did anyone have anything they wanted pulled?
I do.
Okay.
Can you pull 4.7?
Okay. Anyone else? With nothing else, if I could I have a motion to approve consent agenda without 4.7?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus 4.7, approval of personnel action items.
All those in favor? Suzanne?
Aye.
Jamie?
Sorry, do we need a second for that motion?
I believe we had one.
Oh,
Did I
I'm
miss
sorry.
that?
I didn't hear it. Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
I am also an aye. Show that it approved unanimously.
Mr. Goy, can you just confirm who the second was for the record for Lupita Goodman?
I thought it was Suzanne. I thought I had heard Suzanne say second. Am I incorrect?
I need to say second again. Or I second. I mean,
Was she muted when she seconded? I'm asking a question here, that if
I didn't hear it.
if nobody heard a second, then we'll start over.
I didn't hear a second.
let's start. I mean, I was futzing with my button both times, so let's start over, I guess.
Okay, so with that, if we could I have a motion for the consent agenda items 4.1 through 4.6?
I will re-motion my to approve the consent agenda through 4.6.
I second.
All those in favor, Suzanne,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
I am also an aye. Show that it approved unanimously. So if I'm looking at your guys' faces here, okay, so if when I see lips moving, I assume everyone's hearing something. So if it's not coming through to everyone, please say something because there is a lag on some of you guys, okay? Item number 5.1, discussion and consideration to approve Liberty Online School instructional plan. Dr. Schuff.
I would like to turn that over to Mrs. Camp, who did a tremendous amount of work to get our Liberty Online School up and running, and she can give you a brief overview of that because it has actually been submitted.
Mr. President, governing board members, presenting to you tonight our AOI application, Arizona Online Instruction Application for review and recommending approval of the Liberty Online School Plan and School Entity.
So just a little background, we gained direction from the governing board to pursue this short timeline for submission. I believe the due date was August 3rd, Mrs. Camp? Or was it even
June 31st?
What am I thinking? I'm thinking
Or
of the
June 30th?
Okay, yes. So it was due. We're coming back now, and just think it's a good idea to have them formally approved by the board, even if it's retroactively. So.
Does anyone have any questions? Hearing none, if I could I get a motion to approve item 5.1?
I make a motion to approve the Liberty Elementary School District AOI Arizona Online School Instruction Application.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Jamie?
Aye.
Suzanne?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
I am also an aye. Show that it approved unanimously. Item number 5.2, Dr. Schuff.
Mrs. Camp has had a busy summer, and at the time also she worked on a distance learning plan. The information in this back and forth with our governing board, with our staff, and as I said before, based on a lot of the recommendations we received from feedback from our parents and teachers. But I'll turn that over to Mrs. Camp to share with you how we turned it in, but how we have the opportunity for adjustment going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Schuff. Mr. President, governing board members, in your board packet, you will see the Liberty Elementary School District Distance Learning Plan that was submitted to the Arizona Department of Education per the executive order of Governor Ducey prior to starting delivery of distance learning. So we have received approval of our Liberty Elementary School District Distance Learning Plan, and that distance learning plan can be revised and updated as needed by resubmitting to the Arizona Department of Education, again, as needed and as things change. Requesting your approval for the Liberty Elementary School District Distance Learning Plan.
Did anyone have any questions?
I just want to confirm the questions that I sent will be addressed or shared.
Yes.
I don't need to ask them specifically here.
Sure. There was, I think one point that you shared with me, Mrs. McNamara, was that some information, our response to some of the multiple choice types questions in the, because it's an online form we have to submit to the Department of Education. And in that, it references how we will go about making a decision about, who's in person, who's at distance learning, that sort of thing. And at the time, we had a different executive order than we do now. So anything that is no longer current, if you will, with how we're doing things now or how we're directed to do things now in terms of distance learning, as the school district submits for any revisions to our distance learning plan, we'll take that opportunity to bring anything that's past incorrect, that's now a different fact. We'll update those at those times as well. But there's really no reason to resubmit to the Arizona Department of Education for any of those kinds of changes.
Anyone else? Hearing none, if I could I have a motion to approve item number 5.2, the approval of distance learning plan?
I make a motion to approve the distance learning plan.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Jamie?
Aye.
Suzanne?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
I am also an aye. Show that it approved unanimously. Item 5.3, discussion and consideration to approve the Liberty Back to School Plan, prepared for safe return to school mitigation plan. Dr. Schuff.
Mr. Aguirre, members of the board, I would like to share with you, I'll share with my screen in just a moment, and I've added some additional information to kind of clarify our history with a mitigation plan. And that includes how our understanding of what the Department of Education meant by a mitigation plan over time. So let me just give this just a moment. And here, and present. So Natasha, Mr. Aguirre, let me know if you could see the screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Terrific. Okay. So when we started in May and June with our committee and bringing some information to the governing board, the term mitigation plan wasn't in any of the roadmap that presented to us by Arizona Department of Education. So that's a new vocabulary. So we've just kind of tried to say, what is it that is meant in the executive order and the new information released by the Department of Education, requesting that we have a mitigation plan and we have it posted. So what we presented to our governing board late June is we presented 3 scenarios, if you will, that were very, we modeled them after the roadmap that ADE had provided. And the first one is kind of, we called it at that time, all return. I think we've since that time really called that our in-person learning model. And in that, this is the slide, I just pulled it from what was presented before. ADE had laid out what the level of community spread in the community would be to warrant having all students on campus, and that was none to minimal local cases of COVID-19. Well, all of May, all of June, July, and even as we started August, we still didn't have any type of a benchmark, any type of criteria that would tell us, we knew we weren't at none, but what constituted minimal? With all the recent data that's coming out in the newspaper and online, we knew we were probably above minimal, but we had no way of knowing that. And then we had some other criteria we talked with the board about that we also knew that, to be able to offer in person completely, it also would have to do with, did we have the staffing to pull that off? So these were some of the things we thought about. We considered a hybrid, and how our district interpreted that at the time was we would look at either an in-person model or a hybrid model. And in this case, it makes a little more sense now with what has since come out from the state. They've listed a hybrid model as when you are at minimal to moderate cases. And we negated the opportunity or the consideration for hybrid, a lot to do with because of the on-site support services requirement, that it just seemed better to give our families some choices and consider perhaps just going with in-person instead of in-person or hybrid is really how we looked at it overall, both administration and our board. And then the third scenario we looked at in June was maybe a completely distance model. And so later, after this, we started to look at maybe a choice direction with it. So that's what we ended up bringing back to our community, is rather than this kind of phased approach based on the level of spread in the community, we tried to offer choices to our families. We always had some concern about the completely in-person because we knew we were not able to fully meet all of the recommendations around health and safety with in-person. So then, before the health benchmarks came out, we received this this new display. I thought it was an interesting graphic that talked about many of the categories of considerations for whether you should come back to school. And if we were coming back to school in person at this time, I really just took a look and said, where do we fall in this model? And you can see that if right now, where we are right now is in the top row, we're all online instruction. And obviously that is, out of all the choices for school, that is the least amount of risk. But we all have a desire to come back to school because we know the value and importance of that. So when you go down, by levels, you can start to see all online instruction with transition to on-campus instruction when less community transmission. So I think of that as how the new health benchmarks are referring to when we're all online, that's kind of at that substantial level. And then starting to look at, well, what would it look like if we were maybe in a moderate zone? However, if we were back in person with the class sizes that we have for our in-person class sizes and our inability to completely keep those cohorts and grouping of students together and not intermixing those in the cafeteria, for example, because we're not able to do that, my evaluation of this is that we have many areas in which we are at the very highest risk level, and a few of them where we actually, I think, would do quite well if we came back. I think, with us having face coverings, that puts us in kind of that green to yellow zone. Our ability to do the hand washing. I think one thing that's I'm not seeing up here is the cleaning and those protocols. I think we would do really very well with those as well. So this has been a worry for me, for administrators, and for teachers, and I believe for some families as well, about what it would be like if we came back in person. So just this past Thursday, and we had a webinar on Friday, so this is really late-breaking information. The Arizona Department of Health Services did come forward with what would those metrics be? What would the data look like if we were at a minimal level, a moderate level, or a substantial level? And there were three benchmarks, one having to do with the cases, one having to do with percent positivity of the testing, and then the level of COVID-like illness in hospitals. So I'm just going to take each one of those benchmarks and provide a little bit of information, because it's important for us as we set what our mitigation plan is, that you have this information. You'll also use this same information in the next board agenda item. So let's look at the first one, and I just cut and pasted pieces from so you can see where it comes from. So this is the information, the table that was in the information published by Arizona Health Services. And then I combined it with another slide they have, just so we could look at one slide at a time without me having to flip back and forth. So I took the first and this should have actually said benchmark 1. So I took the first benchmark, And there are it's an or statement. So there's two ways to meet this benchmark according to Arizona Health Services. One is that you have a decline in the number of cases for 2 weeks. So over down here in the bottom portion of the slide, you see a chart, and you can see that on the week of July 5th through probably the 11th, I would say, we had 453 cases per 100,000. And then you see later in July, and then by July 19th, you see the 173 per 100,000 there for July 19th. And what is happening here is you're seeing a two weeks in a row, there's a downward trend. So because there's a downward trend for 2 weeks, it's considered we're meeting that benchmark and benchmark 1. So again, over here on the left, that should say benchmark 1. So one way, the or statement, we've met one of the 2 criteria, but AHS is considering that benchmark would be met. The other thing I would tell you is this data dashboard that they have created. The data dashboard is relaying you information that's from the moderate portion of the table that I showed you. So in this case, you would be expecting to hit between 10 to 100 cases per 100,000. For some reason in their table here, they didn't show you the or statement that comes up later in the information. So I think this is where it's challenging to try to interpret everything, but there really are two types of information that's allowable. So if we went just on the 10 to 100 cases per 100,000, we would not yet be meeting this criteria for Maricopa County. Then when you go to the second benchmark, this is the percent positivity. So what percent of all those tested are testing positive? So we were at 16.9% the week of July 12th. It has come down to 13.2% the week of July 19th through 25th. And so I look at that and I see a 4% drop. And then I just, kind of asking myself, well, do we have hope of this getting better? If we continued a 4% drop for the next 2 weeks, and we got down to below 10% here, the next 2 weeks, we would be falling in this moderate zone, which they're referring to as that hybrid. And if we were to get all the way to below 5% or 4% or less, we would make it all the way over to the green, the minimal, saying we've got that 0 to minimal level of COVID in the community. So at this point, we have not met for any weeks the percent positive. When we look at the benchmark 3, again, I've got the benchmarks at the top there for both minimal and for moderate. And you can see in this example, we have dropped the percentage from 11.3% to 7.9%. That 7.9% falls within the 5 to 10% of the moderate benchmark. And so for 1 week, it does require 2 consecutive weeks with hospital visits, COVID-like illnesses in the region below 10%. So we've not yet met that benchmark, but that's showing good progress. If we were to get 1 more week in a row, then we will have met this benchmark for the moderate level. But we would not yet have met that for the minimum level unless we were at less than 5% for 2 weeks.
So Dr. Sheff?
Yes.
I believe the information lags 2 weeks, but that's, if I'm calculating that's right, is that 3 weeks lag? But typically it's only a 2-week lag.
So it goes July 19th through the 25th, as I recall. And the information is going to come out again. It's going to come out on Thursdays, is what Arizona Health Services has reported. So we can expect another week. So yes, it is lagging because most of the data charts that you see are at least a week behind, and some of them are 10 to 18 days behind, depending on which data set you're looking at. So there is the dashboard, which I'm not showing you live, that our community can easily see it. It can be clicked on to see it by county. Certainly the best scenario is if those were built so you could see those by zip code, and the 2 primary zip codes that our district falls within, that would make it even more specific to our community. So this is kind of a messy slide that I just copied their slide, and it's really this: if this, then that. You know, what should you do? And all of the metrics they're looking at are really, again, in this hybrid area. And it also notes that, you know, if you're considering this transition to a hybrid model, schools should consider resuming virtual learning when 1 or more benchmark categories are in substantial transmission. So if we, in other words, if we revert back to substantial where we stand today, then we should be considering moving back away from a hybrid model. So I think that's a consideration for us as how we start to set our decision-making points so that we can have the most consistency for our family and children, but yet optimizing our opportunity for a safe return to school. So I'm going to just stop there before I go to the next slide and kind of talk about some implications. So let's just talk about this idea that we implemented 3 options. We will continue to offer our online support, our online school. We will continue to implement the distance learning for families who wish to remain in the distance learning. And we have a group of parents and children that have opted for in-person. So we're looking at what will be the decision points that will allow us to come back and start to transition some of these students back in. So really it's what do we do with these in-person students? What are the conditions that need to be met according to the benchmarks or something else that the board would recommend? And what might that transition plan look like? Because I think that was my concern, is if we come back, the plan does provide for, I'm still presenting, so let me show you this slide from their slide deck. I don't know if that's quite large enough, but when the community level spread is at no to minimal, I think the really encouraging thing is it's looking at a traditional way of returning to school. We wouldn't be dealing with social distancing. We wouldn't be having cloth-based covering, and we wouldn't have need to adhere to the keeping these cohorts together and not intermixing. But in this hybrid, when we are minimal to moderate, when we'd be bringing some of these children back, when we would have to first acknowledge how can we make sure we adhere to these requirements of physical distancing and cloth-based coverings. So we have some class sizes, they're really small for what we normally do as a district, because we've, so what I've shown you here, and this, don't take this as the absolute factual truth. This is where our enrollment is. It doesn't necessarily have withdrawals. And this is a very fluctuating document, but it's designed here today just to show you what do some of those in-person class sizes potentially look like. So some of them are relatively small. And then if you look at Westar, for example, our 4th grade, we've got 25 students in one classroom, 27 in another in-person classroom. Our principals have laid out the desks in classrooms and I've asked them to actually go around and measure seat to seat, how far apart are we? And they are reporting back we're about 2 feet apart. If we could get that down in half, we get a lot closer to 4 to 6 feet apart, and we've got more of that social distancing back in classrooms. So what I think I am recommending is that we entertain the idea of some type of a hybrid model, not just a straight in-person or no in-person, that we find a way to bring back perhaps our most vulnerable students, our youngest learners who can't read, our children or English learner pre-emergent students who can't approach the language, our self-contained special education classrooms where they're highly reliant on special technologies and equipment and additional support staff to support their learning, and look at something, a scenario for that, which I'm happy to talk more about, an idea for that. But first I want to get the board's thoughts on, should we be adding to our plan transition or a phased back approach for in-person, or waiting until we reach a minimal level?
So Dr. Schuff, that's, when you say phased in approach, what would the grade levels be that you're looking at? When you say that the younger kids, I heard you say about.
Sure. So what I was trying to see what's possible. So the goal of a hybrid plan is to reduce the number of students at one time enough that you're able to achieve social distancing and you're able to achieve keeping those cohorts together. So in the event that there was a case of COVID on our campus, we really are able to pretty cleanly be able to say, we had this classroom, they weren't intermixing with other classrooms, they weren't in the cafeteria, they with other groups of kids. They did things as they stayed as a cohort throughout the day. And it was a small enough group that was exposed to that we feel like we're able to get in and mitigate that pretty quickly, communicate to people, quarantine people as appropriate, and come up with our plans. So that hybrid, when we look at the class sizes I showed you, while our class sizes are small, they're still not small enough to pull that off for the students that are assigned to an in-person teacher designed to come back in person when we're able to. So how do you get around that? There's probably more than two ways, but we have been talking as with administrators and folks that we have access to about, well, you can look at an alternating plan. That's one the committee had some consideration and conversation around. And the committee looked at 2 days on, 2 days off, but they really did not think that that was the best scenario for our youngest learners, our K1 or K2. So they thought what was best for those youngest learners was a half-day model. So then we said, well, can we do that for all the people who want to come back in person? Well, the answer is no, because we just don't have enough transportation, drivers or buses to be able to accommodate a scenario where, basically the children come every day, but for a shorter period of time, and then they go home and they can do some independent work that they might turn in through Google Classroom, or they might complete at home as a hands-on type of a thing and bring back to the classroom on the following day when they come to school and they're in person with half of the kids in their class at a time. So knowing that the other issue we faced is that when we were distance learning in the spring, our older students we found had the least engagement, the least participation, and they were kind of in the wind, if you will, not participating, not turning things in. So we feel like we've made a giant improvement with particularly our middle school students, with their attendance, with their participation, and we're worried that if they only came to school 2 days a week, we would lose them for the other 3 days when they're just expected to do things through Google Classroom without that ongoing interaction with the teacher. Because as soon as you move to hybrid, that teacher that's been teaching the children every day in person, asynchronously, would only be able to teach the children that the teacher sees in person, and the other cohort of students would be at home with no access to a teacher during that time. It would be just their assignments that they would be completing and turning back. So we weighed out what is the best experience of from a learning perspective. We thought about from a standpoint of parents, our youngest learners is where we are getting the most communication from our families, that this is just really hard, especially when they have multiple children in the home. And just trying to consider all that. I think our worry about going to a half-day model for, let's say, kindergarten through 4th grade is what we think we could do from a transportation standpoint, as well as our self-contained students. Our worry there is we would have some children, getting off the bus, and the younger children that may have been supervised by older students. But we have that longer break during the midday, so older students could still meet children at a bus stop and walk them home. So those could be some possibilities. So we're just trying to think of it from all angles, and again, it's not completely a perfect scenario, but I think what we are considering as a starting place for the conversation potentially is this idea that we our goal is to get to traditional in-person for anybody who wants in-person this year. But in this phase model, until the health conditions are where they need to be in the minimum level, while we're in the moderate level, we would phase in some of our students back to completely in-person at school. And at this time anyway, we're thinking about kindergarten through 4th grade in the half days, and Wednesdays being early release, that would be every other Wednesday. Special education self-contained would be daily for the full day. And I think we have to have more conversation. We just haven't explored this one enough, is our EL students, our pre-emergent students, maybe one more level up. They would already be on the half-day model for if they were K4, so it's really only the 5th through 8th grade students that we would have concerns about for those with the least amount of language. There's very few in our district because those students tend to be primary grade students. And I think the downside of this model is that the 5th through 8th grades would continue distance learning until we met a minimal threshold or some in between threshold between minimum and moderate that the board might indicate.
Okay, so I know this is a hot topic for everyone. So what I'd like to do is I want to open it up and give everyone a chance to go around and say what you think with what Dr. Schaus is presenting. And if somebody's already touched on that topic, if you could not come back to it until the end, let everyone get through. So, so with that.
So can I get a point of clarification before we start that, Mr. Aguirre? Because I'm confused between 5.3 and 5.4. I just want to make sure we're not bleeding over into 5.4 in our discussion. So,
yes. So we're required to share with the community our mitigation plan that says how will we move through this. So when you're at a minimal level, when you're at a moderate level, and in addition to the mitigation plan is also all of those safety and health and safety considerations. So in the back to school plan, the updated version that I shared with you, I included some information broadly, more generally than what I've shared with you as an example of what that hybrid could look like. And we have time because we have not, whatever the board votes in this next board agenda item for evaluating whether it's appropriate to return to school and appropriate, when you want to consider that. We can talk about that in the next agenda item, but also just having clarity on, do we want to have in our mitigation plan a hybrid model? And we have time that we can come back and bring back to the board, with some overall direction from you. We can do greater work on this. We can include some stakeholders in the further crafting of it, but just wanting generally, do you want it to be straight to from distance straight to in-person, or do you want to include this hybrid or phased in approach, however it comes out to be? Are you interested in having that in a mitigation plan? And I think that's the part we have to decide on. Does that help?
So we're not
Yes,
talking about,
yes, thank you.
we're not talking about the metrics, just whether that's the next.
That'll be
agenda
in the
item or
that'll
just
be in
on
the next
agenda.
that'll be in the next agenda item. So
Yeah.
just to clarify for everyone in the
That's fine.
public, what this item is our administration is asking this board if we would be interested in a phased in approach to opening school to in-person. So with that, we'll go ahead and open it up, and we'll start with Yolanda.
If we do open it up, what time are we talking, after the 17? What time are you thinking of opening it up to the hybrid model?
Okay, so if we were using the health benchmarks, I won't be able to say when, because what we're really establishing is what are the here are the benchmarks, here are the levels, and our board can, in the next agenda item, say when we come back or postpone that. In this time period, we're really saying if we did some type of a hybrid or a phased-in approach, then we would be, as recommended in the back-to-school plan, would be according to the health benchmarks. So if we're saying if we hit the moderate level, then we would be implementing some type of a hybrid. So if and when that happens, we would be implementing a hybrid model. And if and when we hit the minimal level, we would have the opportunity really to bring everyone back, or for sure all of our in-person who are ready right now to come back. We know that some families may still wish to stay distance even longer.
Okay, well, to me, I would prefer to wait until the minimal. So no, I don't really would want to start at the moderate with a hybrid.
And just to clarify again, that doesn't mean now, Mrs. Lopez-Bearden, that means at a point when the health benchmarks and the data in the community match that lower level, because right now we're at substantial, it would be when we reach the moderate criteria.
But that's what I'm saying, that I don't want it until the minimal.
Okay, thank
We
you.
hit the minimal. I wouldn't want not the hybrid. I don't want it now at the moderate, or when we get to the moderate.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Thank you.
Jamie, your thoughts?
I'm kind of a go on the phased in when we reach that moderate. Parents aren't going to be forced to send their kids. It would still be an option. Is that right?
Yes, so we think we'd be opening it up to all of our in-person. We will have to have limits, right? So it's not like every in-person child is going to be able to come back to the brick and mortar school. We're going to have it, a smaller population, figure out how to phase that in, a subset, if you will, of the total population of in-person. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, same. I would be okay with phasing back in with a moderate level. Some feedback from parents would be nice too, to gauge sort of what they're feeling on it, so we can make an informed decision. But I know we're all getting communication about people wanting to send their kids, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's each to their own. So I want to make sure that we have options for parents where they can continue to have their kids at home or send them when it is safe. So I'm okay with the moderate.
Kathy, your thoughts?
So I guess I never thought of this as a hybrid. It's more of a re-immersion into in-person. And I think so for me, it was a little bit of a vocabulary. This is kind of what I thought would happen, because I want to be confident that the execution of the plan can be managed, that our supply chain, that we have a healthy organization, that supply chain, the cleaning can happen. And I think when you go from none to 3,900 students, then give or take, we don't know what that number is going to be. Day 10 drops probably will happen here. Not this week, but the next week, day 10 drops will happen. So my concern is getting the kids that really need to be in front of a teacher, regardless of what grade they are. Because quite frankly, today I was part of a covert operation of locating 2 5th graders that had disappeared online. And their parent works outside the home and one works in the home, and they were in a conference call and they had no clue their kids were MIA. And these are kids that, they're good kids, but again, there's some, attention and just being however old they are. I'm not even sure how old 5th graders are anymore, but IEPs I do not see on your list, or 504 plans. And things I heard earlier in the presentation, I don't feel, and I have no evidence based on some parent feedback, because this is probably in my 3 years on the board, the most communication I've ever received in a 2-day period from parents and from staff members. And if nothing else of COVID has come out of it, parents recognize kids need to be in school. They recognize the value of a teacher. And these kids are struggling. And actually, I've heard kids that don't even like school say they miss school. So there is some positivity coming out of COVID. So if whatever we decide that go line is, whether we use the benchmarks given to us or we as a board come up with a different set of benchmarks, because they're not required, we need to be able to open like that, because we will have to close like that. And that is what we did to families in March. And we will be doing a disservice to them if we can't find a way to open up swiftly, while safely, because I still question face masks and social distancing. Because everything I've read, everything I've heard from every health source has been either or, it does not have to be both. So I think that's very clear that I'm for the phase-in approach. And I think it needs to be figured out sooner than later, or we're doing a disservice to all involved. So.
Suzanne, your thoughts?
I'm open to a phased-in approach. I definitely understand the logic of bringing our early elementary students back first. I also have some concerns about our special ed kids that are not necessarily in a self-contained classroom, but they still cannot function on this distance learning format. So I'm not sure if that's something that, can be worked into the hybrid or discussed further. I mean, I know that's not my decision for all of you to make, but just to keep in mind that I do think that there's a lot of special ed children that, need services that can't be met at home, that are struggling. So if there is a way that we can possibly even service them in school, if we can have something set up, I mean, I would like to see that added. I also was wondering if we could get some feedback from the teachers. I feel like when the survey went out for the teachers, and maybe I'm misspeaking, it was understood that they marked whether they wanted to do in person, but we said when it is deemed safe, would you teach in person? So I want to make sure that we are saying, if we're doing this hybrid phase in moderate, that are we saying to them that it is deemed safe, because that is what they chose to come back into the classroom. I think that that's what some of them were under the understanding. We got one letter from a staff member, and I felt like that's what she was asking from within the letter. But definitely a phased approach. I think we all want to get kids back in the classroom. We know that that is the best instruction for them. And if that is an avenue for us to get our kids back in, I am open to it. But I would like to know that we can do the social distancing and those other safety precautions. I don't think I would be okay with the phase-in approach if it was looking at those class sizes. It would have to be half of those class sizes, 10 to 12 kids.
Dr. Schuff, so the phased in, this is different than support services, correct?
Yes, it is.
Can you talk about the support services a little bit? Because I thought that support services included some of the other programs.
It
as
does.
Far as okay. Can you discuss that? Because listen, everyone, there's so much info out there, and it's coming at us 100 miles an hour, and we're trying to differentiate everything, right? So let's listen to what she has to say as far as support services, because it was brought up about the 504s and things of that nature. So go ahead, Dr. Schuff. I'm sorry.
Sure. So the executive order does require that all school districts provide on-site support services. Arizona Department of Education has provided further guidance on that. And it really is intended for those students who do have some additional needs. So an example of something that we're looking at, and really the defining line is, are they able to, are they going to experience any difficulty with their learning virtually? So a great example is a self-contained student who requires specific equipment. So unless we have delivered that equipment to their home, which in very many cases we already have, but there may be some that we're not. And so the only way for them to actually meet their IEP is to be there. So we've got different pieces of online support, and the online support does provide, whether it's EL, whether it's special ed, it provides some additional services, and that is different than coming back to school. So we can have more information about our on-site support services in a future agenda item. This next week we can talk about what's been implemented so far, because that will get implemented here on Monday, and that will very much include some special education services.
Yeah, I didn't want to get off track. That wasn't my intention. It was just, it was brought up, and I don't know if people misunderstood some of the executive orders. So I just wanted you to address that a little bit, kind of maybe answer some questions that people had going on in their minds. As far as for me, a phased in approach, I think is realistically the smartest thing to do. To your point, Ms. McNamara, of going all or nothing, what that would look like. I mean, I don't know that any of us can sit here and say what that would look like, that one day, okay, everyone's going back to school, and and we're transitioning all these kids and off of virtual, and everyone's back in, so to your point. But I just think that a phased in approach is the smart thing to do, that we're really going to be able to get the kids who need the most help in learning, we're going to get them that help, right? I mean, I hate to kind of lump everyone into these big groups, but some of the older kids, they're kind of, for the most part, in general speaking terms, they're kind of self-starters. Whereas the little ones, I mean, as we can all imagine, because a lot of us have little ones, that their mind wanders a little bit. You know what I mean? I think this is the smart thing to do. I think that we're listening to the public on this. I think that we're staying true to our values of supporting the community with the best education, affordable. And I think it's doing this is going to be somewhat a breath of fresh air, a little bit of normalcy for parents, for staff, for the kids. Okay. With that, if anyone has anything else that they'd like to talk about with this, please go ahead.
May I ask for just a little bit of guidance from the governing board? I proposed a set of parameters. I think I heard an interest of, we know that we would have a 7th grader that has a difficult time paying attention. He's got ADHD, let's say. So you need to know that we also will have requirements that we've been given absolutely no latitude with IDEA. So we will have, while we may want to bring back the 7th grader with ADHD, we may not be able to if we haven't kept them with their peers, least restrictive environment, according to what their IEP is. Now, also recognizing that we will be going through a number of IEP reviews, and that may result in changes to IEPs, perhaps. But so just know that we'll look at it within the context of what we're allowed to do with special ed, because there's so much special education law that will be restrictive, perhaps in some ways, versus what you think, what you would expect. So just know that. Then the other piece is, if you are thinking that we should, go one direction versus another, if you like the idea of the half day and the kind of that normal routine for children coming, pretty much every day, or, if you were looking at some other way to reduce the number on campus, because we can get some feedback from people about the nuance of it and some more of the detail level. But I just want to make sure we're on track on the big idea of how we'd be approaching a phase back of bringing some of our in-person children back to school with the idea that I presented, or something else you would propose.
So I want as many students that is possible safely back on campus. And that's the plan I'd like to see.
Okay.
And quite frankly, I want to see it as quickly as you can put it together, because I don't want to be 3 weeks out. I don't want to be 3 weeks from now and we hit the benchmarks and we can't open because we don't know what the heck we're doing. That's the first thing. Second thing, essential workers. Nobody asked a doctor if it's safe doing what they do. My husband, essential worker, and went to work with cancer and was working every day but 3 weeks. I am all for supporting teachers, but we are not going to mitigate to zero exposure. We can't guarantee that to anybody. And so let's just talk about that. There is risk in anything we do. And I think you said it, Dr. Sheff, everything that we do, we add risk. We have a mitigation plan, which is what we're talking about, to reduce that to a point. And that's the face masks, that's all of that. But if you think that we're going to say it's safe, we're going to give 100% assurance it's safe to come back to the classroom for anybody, we are setting this board, this community, and everyone up for failure. So no, I don't think we can say that. I'm a little passionate about this because of the statistic that reporting of abuse went down by 51% last month overall, or in the last few weeks, not last month, though it was reported out last month. And I can provide you those, the data point on that. And that's because who is the biggest people that step in the safety for those children, and that's our teachers. And so it goes back to being more than just a health crisis. And I don't have the answers, and I know that nobody has the magic answer. Dr. Sheff, I've told you, I've poured and scoured for data all over the place and what other people are doing. And no one has that, and we can't guarantee 100% safety. So I think we need to have that level set with this group alone. We are not saying you are going to be 100% safe and there's not going to be an exposure. If we are, I'm not a part of that conversation. So I just want to be really clear about that. The letters that we've gotten, I think we're up to 13, I lost count, 2 from staff members. All of the parents want what's best for their child. Every post, social media, you don't have to agree with the parental post. You don't have to understand why they're posting it. They're posting it because it's their child and they're trying to get what's best for their child. So I believe the only way we can do that is to get them back to school as quickly and as safely as possible. I'm not saying just open up the gates and let it happen. I'm saying let's do it smartly and quickly, and there's no guarantee. There's just not. So I want to make sure I'm not the only one that understands that, and that's why I needed to say that piece. So that's what I would like from you, Dr. Sheff, is I would like the most amount of kids consistently in school on a daily basis. And quite frankly, if they have a 4-hour exposure or a 6-hour exposure opportunity, it doesn't matter. It's still an opportunity for exposure. So again, I want the most kids available back in school because we have a huge bridge to build from what we lost last year.
So we're going to get in to the benchmarks in the next item, and I want to make sure that we're all in, or if everyone understands what the phased-in approach looks like. We're going to get into the benchmarks here in just a minute. Okay. So does anyone have anything else that they want to add as far as what they would like to see as a phased-in approach? Because correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Sheff, but what you're presenting to this board is that K through 4, self-contained, some special ed, half days, correct?
Yes.
And that will be the start of our phased-in approach.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure that everyone's clear on what that is, okay?
I would like to see actual numbers of what class sizes are going to be. I don't want to see a phased in hybrid approach that there's 20 kids in a class and we're putting two feet in between desks. So I want to make sure that we can do it with the social distancing guidelines, so we can do it. Obviously, we can't do anything 100%. Your kid can get hurt at school, a teacher can get hurt at school, but just the safest to our ability that we can do it.
When we bring back the plan, we will be able to attach numbers to that, so you'll be able to see how we have addressed that, whether by how we've staffed it, how we've used our facilities, or how we've carved out which children would be participating when. So we can match that. So in the back to school plan on page 4, it's written rather generically, but it does say for our in-person learning, we're going to start with distance learning when we're at a substantial threshold. And again, the board can make some modification to what you call that substantial threshold, or go with Arizona Health Services. Then we're going to transition with hybrid with moderate threshold, and that would be our phased in approach. with some of our in-person kids coming back. And then later, when it reaches the minimal threshold, we return to traditional in-person learning when they all have the opportunity to come back every day for a regular traditional schedule. So this then would kind of constitute what, if you will, the change from what our back to school plan was before, and including a little bit more of this mitigation plan. And that's what I'm seeking approval from the board this evening.
Oh, I'm sorry. You heard that. So page 4 is more generic, high level. It's not really the who. It's just more of, this is the plan, and then you will determine the who. So what I heard you say earlier, I know Mr. Aguirre came back and said you were talking about this and this. I believe you were still asking for input from the board, that it didn't necessarily have to be that group. The vote we're doing here is that this is the plan. This is the plan of transition in, and not really, we're not voting on the who piece of it. Correct?
Well, so it could be two ways. One, I can bring that back to the board with a specific, more detailed version of what our hybrid plan would be and who's indicated, numbers involved. Or you could be directing me to make an adjustment to be a little more specific in this back to school plan. So depending on how you craft a board action.
Dr. Schuff, are you prepared to share the numbers that Suzanne was talking about by chance of what that would look like K through 4?
So yes, let me just share again for a moment. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we know that we could have some families that are distance want to jump back in person when they see this model. So depending on spaces available, so we'll have to monitor that and keep those numbers balanced out. But so my example here at Westar, 3rd grade, if we split that 3rd grade into 2 classes, we're looking at 12 students. If we split the other section that's at 26, we're at 13 students. And I think the highest one I see here in K4 is at 27 students. Now, you can see between the 2 sections, principals always have the latitude to balance out classes between 2 teachers if they see some. So 25 and 27 is not a big difference. You'll see some much larger differences at Las Brisas, and that has a lot to do with what you can't see under the hood is what's going on with how they are handling their dual language immersion plan. And so that's why it looks, it's not going to be, you're not going to see why one first grade's at 14 and one's at 20. It has, or 27 and 15. So there's just a lot more going on at Las Brisas that I would not use them as an example. So we have a couple of options when we come back, and we just check those 4th grade classrooms. Can we appropriately socially distance with 13 or 14 per cohort? And where we can't, do we have any capacity for adding a paraprofessional and splitting that class in a third, the way I've been using the teach. So there could be some unusual creative things we could look at to try to accomplish that. But overall, I think 13 and 14 is the largest we're looking at.
Does that help answer any more concerns as far as this model and what that would look like? Social distancing, wearing face masks.
Yes, it did. It did.
Anyone else have anything? Is anyone interested in putting hard language to this now? And when I say hard language, I'm talking about K through 4, just exactly what Dr. Schuff described tonight. For me, I'll give you my thoughts real quick. For me, I think that we should put to this as far as our phased in approach, so that there is no question for parents, so that they're going to understand this is what a phased in approach looks like tonight. I think we've left families out there wondering about a lot of different things. And if we can, I just feel if we can answer some questions for some of the families, that I think that's the right thing to do. And I know that this is not an easy decision. So just go ahead, Jamie. I apologize for cutting you off, but those are just my thoughts.
No, and I don't need to spend more time. What you said is kind of how I'm feeling too. Phasing in, to me, yes. The plan that Dr. Schuff came up with is a yes, and the grades, I don't know, but I would be willing to say yes to that too, if that's what the group felt. The ages is tough for me because I don't know. You know, I've got a high schooler and a 7th grader at home, and they struggle too. And it's more just stress, you know, because we're all learning different things. And it's just, you know, it's not easy for anybody. I don't think anybody is saying that this has been the best, you know, year that we've seen for a long time. But I don't want to spend more time talking. It's just, yes, I'm good for phasing in. And I'm good with what Dr. Schuff came up with the age groups. I'm open, I'm flexible with that. I would like to get some feedback from parents, but I understand what you're saying, Mark, about, you know, let's make a decision, let's put something in writing so we can move forward. So those are my thoughts.
You're muted.
Thank you, Dr. Schuff. Anyone else have any thoughts on putting hard language to it?
I'm good with hard language. I'm good with what Dr. Schuff presented. I would like her to have some flexibility if she felt like she needed to change it. I mean, this is the decisions we hired her to make. She is the expert on these educational decisions. So I would like her to have some flexibility with the grades, and she obviously knows the laws of IDEA and things like that. So, but I am a yes for the hybrid and a yes for the language that's being presented.
Kathy, any other thoughts?
Well, if we give her flexibility, we can't have hard language. You can't, I mean, you've got to have one or the other. So I understand what Suzanne's saying. I'm not saying I don't. I understand where she's coming from. I totally get it. And I'm not for hard language. I don't know what parents are thinking. I will tell you, I know parents think the 17th their kids are walking back on campus. There not a lot, maybe not a lot, but there's enough out there that they really think their kids are coming back next week because they aren't in tune and they aren't staying connected. I'm with Jamie. I believe we need to know what parents will do. And if they're told you're not coming back the 17th and we're going to do this phased in approach, they may change their mind. And quite frankly, we could have a mass exodus because there's private schools right now that are doing in person, and that's what some parents want. So I'm struggling because yes, the K through 4, totally get it. But there are some kids, and I think I heard earlier in the spring, we saw the older kids not engaged. And I think that's still happening. And kids with IEPs and the support services is not the same as getting services through an IEP or a 504, as Dr. Schuff said. So I'm struggling, and I don't want the hard language.
Can I clarify what I meant about hard language? I meant that, the K4, what we have in there, but if she had to add for the questions that we brought up about special education services.
Dr. Schuff, do you know what you could do grade level wise right now?
Yes, because I asked this same question I think the board is asking of me is when we first started talking about this, we started talking about, well, K1, those are our children who can't read. And then we quickly says, well, goodness, our second graders last year, as they were learning to read for third grade move on when reading, they were, shortchanged. So we said, well, it's got to be K3. And I said, well, actually what I'd like to see is what's the biggest number that we can safely bring back and that we have the ability to transport. So fourth grade is our max. At least when you look at the percentage of ridership at a school applied to the numbers of in-person students right now. Now, we also know that we may have some ease that happens there because some parents will choose to drive their children to school. But at this time, I'm not prepared to be able to say that, to put it that tightly to get it all the way to fifth grade. But we also know we'd be adding in the self-contained special education and that transportation. And we also know that we need to put some parameters around for any fifth or eighth grade EL students. And then, some of the 504, some of the special education students in fifth or eighth grade, there may be some opportunities there to provide them additional supports through on-site support, separate from coming back with their teachers. So it's kind of a total picture. I think we can move on it pretty rapidly. I think the biggest challenge will be for our principals and, what the scheduling would look like, and our transportation needs, I would say 10 days to survey families and say, to, get a handle on that. So I think we're, for sure we're 2 weeks away before we had hit the moderate level. We might still not hit it in 2 weeks' time, but if we, if we do, I think that's my only concern is by bringing something back to the board for actual, approval on what that hybrid model is, and then being able to, as you say, pivot quickly to implement. It really just probably comes down to, that's why I wanted to get a sense of what's your direction here, because we can start to build out some schedules. We can start to survey parents on transportation. I appreciate Ms. McNamara and Mr. Miller's question about surveying families. I hesitate to make these kinds of big decisions without asking our parents, because I think I'm solving a problem for fourth grade, and they may say, no, they get more hours of instruction with their teacher through distance than, only 4 half days and every other Wednesday, so I don't know what they would say. But I'm pretty confident that as soon as they can return to in person, they want to. So to help the board, if you feel like, I've got enough direction that I feel like I'm coming back to you with a model that matches pretty closely what I've talked to you about, you could bring that back to the board, and you wouldn't have to have hard language around that. But I could summarize, what was talked about, so I can put that out there publicly, that this is something we're talking about, could immediately try to get some type of survey information out to the public. But then just know that 2 weeks from now, when you come back to review it, we're still going to need a little transition time to actually hit go button and go with it, if we've hit those benchmarks.
And that's my concern. Is that we're delaying it more and more. And I know that this is not what we signed on for a board to have to make these tough decisions. But unfortunately, this is the world that we're living in right now. That it's up to us as community members on this board to try and figure out of what is best for our community. What is our community telling us? Overwhelmingly, our community is telling us they want their kids back in school. That is what this model is giving us. It is a phased in approach. It is a very careful, conservative approach of K through 4 for the kids who need it most, and so in the others also. I think that, in my opinion, that we are doing a disservice to our constituents if we do not make a decision this evening. We're going to get into the metrics, but we got to get going on this first. Because if we can't make a decision on what a phased in approach looks like and what grade levels, how are we going to be able to get into the next item?
So Mr. Aguirre, let me ask you, how do we know we're identifying the highest risk students? How do we know we don't have a kid out there with some mental stuff that they have no one to outreach? They have IEPs, they have 504s. I understand why Dr. Sheff did what she did, and I'm not saying it's a bad approach. I'm not asking for this to be delayed, other than I believe we're missing a part of the kids at risk. That's all. So I've been on this board for 3 years and I have never had a problem making a decision. I told you I wasn't ready to put hard language in there. And that's my right to have that opinion. I'm not asking for the vote to be delayed. I'm asking, are we doing a disservice to 5th through 8th graders? I think it's a fair question.
Dr. Schaff, do you guys have any statistics? I know it's only been but 3 or 4 days of where we were, a sense of where we were during the spring for 5th through 8th grade to kind of where we are now as far as kind of the attitude and the participation and the learning aspect. Has there been any indication coming back from teachers, from principals on that of how engaged the kids are now versus how they were during the spring for those grade levels?
Well, we don't really have comparable data because we weren't taking attendance. The teachers were, we collected some information through, on a daily basis, and principals were collecting that of whether the kids got on, whether they just got on to the Google Classroom in some way. Now we're paying attention to, do they show up into the Google Meet, and then and then are they turning things in? So if they hit one of those two criteria, for the AM or PM, they're counted for, their attendance is carried forward. So when I look at attendance, where do we have more absences? We have a lot of absences in junior high. We have, but they're not evenly amongst all the grade levels. But right now we don't know whether that's because of they're withdrawing. We just don't have enough information to be able to draw that comparison. But we do know that teachers were very concerned last spring that, one, they were going to a great deal of work to prepare everything, and then to find so few kids. They were able to log on, but they weren't doing so on a regular basis. So we're seeing that have been improved. We attribute that mostly to the Google Meets and the interaction they have with their teacher and peers that they didn't have last spring, and the accountability of attendance, and the accountability of grades that will be starting to be collected. So it's a combination of things.
Did I misunderstand earlier, Mark? You had brought it up about there being services for students who have IEPs and special needs through this phased in. Like, while it's phasing in, can you remind me what that was, the services for those students?
Are you talking about the support services that I brought up?
Yes. Is that part of this phased in plan?
That is something that, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Schuff, but that's something that we are required to do August 17th.
Yes.
Right,
so if we are not, if we're offering hybrid or all distance, all virtual, we are required to provide that extra support to families as optional for them to participate in, we're required to provide that. So right now we're opening it up, and then if we move to the hybrid, we still would have to have it available on the off days. So that's kind of the total pictures that would still be a part of it. It only goes away when we are completely in person.
Okay.
But that is not a servicing of an IEP or a 504. It's not, if you have a kid that has to have instructor-led, it doesn't substitute for that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr.
Yeah, I want to be careful getting too far down that road, but I would tell you it does provide, there are some additional supports. It's not the same as teacher-led instruction to those children. But if we find that they did need that, we do have an obligation to provide that. So it's yes and no for that response. So we are implementing some on-site support services that are meeting special ed needs through their IEPs. We will be starting that August 17th, but there'll be a lot of special education students who won't be, that might still be doing. I can't really get in and answer. That's a case-by-case basis based on their IEPs.
I was just gonna say something that you had said that really hit me is the literacy part for K through 4, and I'm a firm believer that literacy is the foundation for learning, and I could move forward with what Mark is asking about giving the grades K through 4 tonight, if I'm hearing that correctly, Mark. That's what you were alluding to, and that's why is because of literacy. And I do realize that if these kids miss out on opportunities to learn literacy, that it's going to hurt them further down the road in their education. And so I'm ready to move forward on making a solid decision on grade levels, which is your plan, and the whole plan, what you gave us earlier.
Okay. So I think we've spent a lot of time on this. Dr. Schuff, how would you like the motion worded for you? I know K through 4, I heard that. What would be the other portion of this?
Well, I would appreciate it still being a little bit general on the special education and EL, because I think we have a little more to research to say exactly how we would service those children. So the EL, and we could say the special education self-contained, kindergarten through 4th grade, and then reviewing the special education needs of 5th or 8th grade, or EL needs of 5th or 8th grade, to determine what else is legally inappropriate for those students.
If I could I have a motion for item 5.3 as discussed with Dr. Schuff in the provisions that she has laid out for us?
I make a motion to approve agenda item 5.3 as discussed with Dr. Schuff, the provisions. Do you need me to list K4? Do you need me to list what
Dr. Schuff?
So we can practice out loud, right? So
it's a lot. That's why I want to make sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's.
So we've got a
K4 special ed self-contained and review the special ed needs and needs of AL learners.
I'm sorry, I just had a little trouble hearing, so some of you also just have to check that. I apologize. So we need the our mitigation plan. We're approving our mitigation plan with a hybrid transition that would include kindergarten through 4th grade alternating half days every other Wednesday. Our self-contained special education meeting daily for full regular schedule, and inclusion of 5th through 8th grade EL or special education students as appropriate for their learning plans.
So moved. Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Yolanda,
Nay.
Kathy,
You need to call back when you recall for the nays, please.
Suzanne,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
I am also an aye. Show that it approved 3-2.
I
For those
did
of you
not,
who vote,
I did not make my vote.
I believe you did not say nay.
I said you need to, you asked me for an aye, was your words. You asked Yolanda and I both for an aye. I just said, I wanted to be clear that I was not voting aye. You didn't call for any nays or oppose. So are you calling
So
for an oppose?
are you abstinent? Are you voting? I asked for approval. We have one nay.
You asked for an aye. You asked for an aye. I wanted to be clear, Mr. Aguirre, that I am voting an opposed, and I would like a point of order to explain my vote.
Show that it approved 3-2 with one nay and one unopposed. Go ahead, Ms. McNamara.
Well, first off, I am opposing, and if I misspoke, I apologize. I absolutely believe in the plan to get kids back into school. I absolutely believe in that. I am not comfortable with the way the motion was made. So that is the only reason I did not support and I voted against.
If anyone would like to take a break, if you could, go ahead and make a motion for a 5-minute recess.
I make a motion for a 5-minute recess.
And I need a second.
Second.
Yolanda, all those in favor, Yolanda,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Suzanne,
Aye.
Jamie.
Aye.
I am also an aye. Let's take a 10-minute break and be back at 8:58 p.m. Sorry about that. It kicked me out. Do we have everyone back? I see Suzanne, Jamie. I don't see Kathy, and I don't see Yolanda back on.
I'm here.
I'm
Okay,
actually
thank you,
here.
Yolanda. Okay. So I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting back to order at 8:59 p.m. Moving on to item 5.4, discussion and consideration to review health benchmarks against Maricopa County. That's a big word. Epidemiology data and possible approval of in-person school start dates. Dr. Schuff.
Mr. Guire, members of the board, the information from Arizona Health Services is provided in the packet. We have the opportunity now to review those benchmarks and determine if those are the benchmarks that we will use for decision making to implement our mitigation plan. And I've left the recommendation action. I left it open because I didn't know how the benchmarks would come out, either what you would agree to and or what we would qualify based on our current condition for that. So if you were to deem this evening that we've met the benchmarks that you agree to, if we've met those benchmarks, then you can set a date for return, or you can recommend a future date to review this again.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up. Kathy, your thoughts?
So the benchmarks are Maricopa County, is that correct?
So the way that Arizona Health Services provides the information is Arizona Health Services provides the benchmarks and the recommendations. That's the information that that I went over in the slides previously, and then is connected here in the executive summary. So we have those benchmarks, and then this agenda item was intended to be able to look at that information against at the county level, because at this time we don't have data that matches what those benchmarks are here at the zip code or school district level. There's talk that the state may be able to put together that information by zip code. They have indicated in a webinar that I attended that they would not be able to do it by the district level.
So essentially we would have 3 zip codes. Predominantly there's 2 for Buckeye, and is there multiple for Goodyear? I don't know.
Yes, there's 2 for Goodyear, 2 for Buckeye.
Okay, so I believe they are good benchmarks. I believe if we looked at just our zip codes, we would probably be much closer to opening. And I believe we need to have the very first date that we hit these, we need to be opening immediately at the level that is deemed by the benchmarks. So I don't think we should wait for this item. If that's, I wasn't sure the exact ask.
Well, at this time, so if you evaluate where we stand, so we could again look at benchmark 1, benchmark 2, benchmark 3. According to those, we have hit 1 of the 3 benchmarks in the moderate level, because that's where the dashboard is showing the data for Maricopa County. We have hit 1 of the 3. So at this point in time, if we're following the benchmarks, we would not be moving towards any kind of in-person at this date. So I think that's a question then for the board. If we're following the benchmark, let's say everyone agrees with your statement, Mrs. McNamara, then we could provide direction as to what date we should. So it could be the action could be amended perhaps to say so many days after we hit the benchmark. It could be we're going to evaluate this same data and the same metrics again in 2 weeks, or again in 4 weeks, or whatever time you all say to come back and reevaluate this as a board again to reevaluate our data against the benchmarks.
Suzanne?
I think that we should use the 3 benchmarks that came from the Arizona Department of Health and Services. I do again think that they are the health expertise that came up with the benchmarks, and I feel like we need to trust that information that they have finally given us. I would like us to see, as soon as we do hit the benchmarks, also that we have a plan to go right in place. I know you said something like 10 days for transportation services to be set up. So if that language or that grace period is put into the agenda item, or I should when we vote. But I do think that we should go off of the metrics. The 3 benchmarks.
Mr. Guire, may I respond to Mrs. McAvoy?
Yes, please.
So when I said 10 days, that was if I was pulling the trigger today.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
I think we could shorten that time frame because we will now be able to start working on that during this next 2 weeks. So, yes, the board's going to decide whatever future date you decide, then yes, there would be some time that we have to communicate with families and allow them time to adjust their childcare arrangements to, their transportation arrangements. It's not just our schools needing to be ready. We have to allow our families sufficient time. Now we can give them some advance notice now to be ready for something, and you can tell us how short or how long of a window of time you want us to provide to everybody between when we hit those benchmarks and when we would make an implementation timeline.
I would also think staff needs some time teachers need some time to give them a heads up. You don't want them teaching online on Friday and in the classroom Monday. I don't necessarily think that would be fair.
Yolanda?
No comment.
Jamie?
Yep, I agree with the 3 benchmarks, using that.
Could we possibly do it by zip code when that becomes available and not county?
I don't have any guarantee it will become available. I think that was an interest that people certainly had, and that was been communicated. I don't know what the turnaround time would be, so that certainly could be that.
Well, I would be okay with staying with the county until that other became available, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. There's nothing you can do to force them to. I forget what Mark used to get them off of the log. I can't remember what he said, to get them moving, basically. But if it would seem like that is the most relevant data is our surrounding zip codes. I believe we should be communicating all of that other information now, including to teachers. I believe I know enough teachers in this district that they're probably itching to get back in the classroom. So I just don't want to delay it any more than we have to.
So we understand that when we're going with these benchmarks, that means we have to hit all 3 of these benchmarks before we start brick and mortar. Is that correct, Dr. Schaff? Your phased in approach,
Yes.
correct? Okay,
Yes.
I just want to make sure the board understands that we have to hit all three of the benchmarks before we even start a phased in approach.
And what is good, it won't be confusing to our public, is the dashboard Arizona Health Services has created. It's designed around the yellow moderate hybrid version. So those metrics that people will see publicly will be ones they'll expect to be turning to green marks versus red marks for each of those benchmarks. I will say when they did open it up and did their initial presentation, they had some of the counties incorrect, and where they had met some benchmarks and was showing a negative. So I know that they had some corrections in the data to make, but Maricopa County's was correct. And we'll just watch that going forward. But yes, that should help our public be able to watch it every Thursday. They would be able to see these benchmarks being met. So for clarification, are you, as a board, discussing a date you want to come back and have you as a board vote and approve this? Or are you thinking you are saying we would see the results on Thursday and by so many, a week later from that, or 10 days or 2 days, what do you, that we would just make the decision and start to communicate? Or are you saying we're going to bring this back to the board to evaluate how well we've met or not met the benchmark together to make that decision?
Well,
I'm not
me,
asking, I'm just trying to
if we're gonna use these numbers, that as soon as all three of these are met, then at that point we start everyone back at once.
Okay,
That if all three of them are met, then at that point the governor has said school's open. Those are the guidelines that they have set forth.
So I need to clarify when those three are met for the yellow, we are all set to come back in a hybrid, our phased back approach. When they all set and all three of them in the green, then everybody can come back. No social distancing, no nothing, according to the benchmarks. So are we saying the same thing?
Thank you for the clarity, because the way that the benchmarks that I'm reading is that we're waiting until it's all green.
Oh, there are also benchmarks that to say we are all at least, so for us to come back hybrid, we have to hit this minimal or moderate, all three in either the yellow or the green. And that allows us to come back with a hybrid model we just talked about in the last agenda item. So if, and on the data dashboard, remember that the way they are showing everybody the data in the data dashboard is representing the yellow moderate level. It's not showing a data dashboard for, you can interpret it, you can look to see if we're under 5% in the green zone, but that data dashboard is designed around the yellow. And that brings us, as soon as we hit the 3 X's or check marks, if you will, in those 3 things on their data dashboard, we will be good to go to implement our hybrid phased in approach. And the soonest we could reach that would be in 2 weeks' time. Well, a week from this next Thursday would be the soonest we could reach it, because this requires 2 weeks in a row for some of those metrics that we have not yet met for the hybrid.
And again, what we're depending on the rest of the county to do what's right. So we're depending on downtown Phoenix not to have a spike, right? Because if downtown Phoenix has a spike, then all of a sudden the metrics go up.
Yes, so ideally we would have zip code level information, which at this time we don't have.
And I don't think we're going to get that information. I think that this is all generalized because people don't want to get down to that level. I've said it many times before that where we live in a very unique area. And I ran numbers based off of the information given to the public on their website. And what I came up with is that for the whole city of Goodyear and the whole city of Buckeye, positive cases as of today is 2.8% of the population of those cities have tested positive for COVID. Now, what it doesn't show, unfortunately, is the percent positive, right? That's unfortunate. It doesn't show any of that other data. It just shows an overall. And what I'm afraid of is that we're hanging what we do on that other areas of the county are going to do the right thing. And that's my biggest concern, because the way that I see it is this could go on for quite some time. Because what's happened is that we did so bad and we had such a spike, and everyone's very excited that they're seeing such a drop right now. And what I'm afraid of is that we're going to plateau and we're only going to start seeing cases decline in the 0.1s, in the 0.2s. And that's my concern.
So are you advocating not to use these benchmarks? I'm just trying to get gain clarity.
What I'm saying is that when we look at them, do we want to bring some of them up a little bit? That's just my perspective. If it, from what I'm hearing is that the board is perfectly fine with, because what I'm hearing is two questions, right, Dr. Schuff, of are we happy with going with the stats that have come out, and then also school start dates, correct?
Yeah, they kind of come together in a package for how you would make a determination of when to start. So another option for the board is, according to the Arizona Health Services benchmarks, we're about 2 weeks out, right? So we could come back to the next board meeting. Have you had a chance to review that data? We could craft the agenda item a little bit differently too, to for consideration of the benchmarks, and come back again looking at it next week. Or if you're saying you're happy with the benchmarks and you want us to follow and enact them, you can do that, and you can still have us come back next week and have it be a discussion item with the board. So whatever kind of discussion you want in 2 weeks, you can still have, no matter how you approach the benchmarks.
Any thoughts on the start dates?
I would rather have something more concrete tonight than come back in 2 weeks, but that's just me.
I also would like us to have something concrete. At least we know what metrics we are going by. And again, what our plan is basically as soon as we meet them.
So where are we at with the start dates then? A week after we meet the metrics, 2 weeks after we meet the metrics?
I would say within a day or two. I don't think you go that long. Because to your point, are we going to stop school if we fall below those? And that we really haven't talked about. I mean, are we going to stick with the metrics and we have to be that all the time? Is there some grace period or grace percentage, or are we going to just move forward? and start. So I would say within 2 school days that we, after meeting well, we know it comes out on Thursday, right, Dr. Schuff? We know that. That's probably not going to change. That's been the pattern since March. Data's come out, conferences, news conferences, everything came out every Thursday, I believe. I think it's just been a pattern overall.
Okay. So I would say that I think a 2-day turnaround is too fast to implement wherever our current student list is, with busing, with parents and childcare. I think I would feel uncomfortable with the 2 days. I don't think we need to have it be 2 weeks, but I think 2 days is too short of a turnaround time.
How much time do you think you would need?
Well, I think that there's some work that can be done now. So when we were talking with our transportation supervisor today, Ms. Griffin was worried that we'd be voting today and we'd be opening, potentially on Monday. I shared with her that I didn't think that was going to happen because we hadn't yet met the metrics, so I didn't think that was going to happen. A week was stressing her out to be able to put that together. However, now with this information, there is some more preliminary work that could be done to be ready for this kind of a hybrid, because that's a different model than what she had been preparing for, which is what we needed to do if we brought all the in-person kids back. So I think we probably could do it in a week notice, because we will have been able to do any of the other preliminary work in the coming 2 weeks, or a week and a half in anticipation of that benchmark. So during this time, remember that this is a new idea, right? This isn't one of the things that we were preparing for over the summer, because we had settled in on 3 different options. So we thought we were getting a lot of variety and options for parents, and we prepared for all of those. But we were not preparing for hybrid. So our principals also have to prepare for a different type of scheduling, and there's some back-end work that has to happen. So at least at this point in time, I would not be comfortable with less than a week.
Which essentially you have between now and Thursday. So you have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, plus a week to the next Thursday. Is that correct? So that's 5, 6, 7 days, 8 days, and then 9. And so really, I am speaking of 10 days out, 10 school days, not calendar days, would be the earliest I would expect you to be able to open if we hit it this week and 1 more week. Then I think what I hear you saying then is we would just put parents on notice this coming Thursday if we hit 1 more milestone, let's say, and we hit, let's say it hit the positive, the one that's going to be the hardest to meet is the % positive, right? 2 weeks in a row at the % positive below the 10%. We're at the 7% or whatever, but then it's below 10%. I think the dashboard is showing. The yellow is 5 to 10%. And I thought we were, I think it was like 11 or 12, 13, somewhere in there from the data from the week of the 19th.
Right. So a couple of those metrics we have to meet. That's the only one that hasn't met it at least 1 week already. So that's the one that has to meet it for 2 weeks. So I think what I hear you saying, if we were to turn it around immediately, 2 days after that benchmark data was released, let's just say it was the following Monday, that means we'd be putting our parents on notice that you might be sending your kids back to school in a half-day model, having your kids come home partway through the day or arriving at school midday and coming home in the afternoon. We might be starting a week from now, be ready, and then we'll let you know the following Thursday, and then you would have to be ready to go on Monday. If you think parents would support that, you are correct that we have 10 to 12 days, or however, I haven't done the math, we do have some time to prepare on our end. And they may be so anxious and happy to come back. It's great. I don't know.
Well, I don't know that they'll like the half day, but I do believe the parents will support kids being back in school based on the emails that I believe all the board members received, so.
Anyone else? Thoughts? The days, what I'm hearing is 10 days.
So like a perfect case scenario, are we talking like the 24th? If everything, like in a perfect world, is that kind of what we're looking at, what we're thinking? Dare I say a date?
Well, so let's look at just what's possible. If we get information on the 13th, we will not get information again until the 20th. The 20th is the soonest we could meet the metric for moderate. And that would be on the 20th. So if you want to say basically every Thursday, I think I hear you saying is you want us to look at the data every Thursday. And on whatever Thursday it is, we're going to look and see, did we hit the metric? And if we met that metric, how much time from that point to when we have a start with kids are you looking for? So if we got the go on the 20th, we have to be able to communicate with the families because they may not be watching it like we are. We communicate with them to tell them to start coming to school. If it was the 20th as an example, what day would you want them to start school?
I mean, if you had everything, oh, go ahead, whoever.
No, you're fine, Jamie. Go ahead. I have a big enough mouth that you go ahead.
I mean, I'm thinking a week. If it's 2 weeks out, you know, like if it's the 20th, then maybe starting school on the Thursday after that, giving parents and everyone an additional 7 days to get ready.
Okay.
I mean, the 5th would have been a Wednesday had it been in person, so it's not unusual to start in the middle of the week. Just, I mean, or the 26th. I don't know. It depends on, you know, if transportation and everything can be put in order in time. But I think 6 to 7 days for parents would be enough. I would hope.
Yolanda, any thoughts on the days?
No comment.
Yeah, and I think if you started communicating this week of what the board had voted on and what you're looking at, and let's say best case scenario, we hit it this week, we hit it next week. I don't understand why I don't, and I have a child. I would be ready to take her to school on Monday. If we're communicating. If, let's say we don't meet this week, or we meet this week and don't meet next week, then we communicate that the clock is reset and we have to hit 2 weeks again. I think it's that constant communication piece that most parents are looking for, and understanding what we're looking for. And like you said, no, you know, not everybody will make a call directly. Not all of our parents, but some of them will call directly to the Department of Health and ask what's going on. And I know a few that have done that. So, but not every parent's that way. So we have to be good with the communication piece. So that's what the task we're putting on you is. Not only, I mean, if you think 10 days is enough to get ready for the bus schedule, prepare the teacher, I think that's sufficient. But again, my child is not in this group because she would not be one of the first ones going back, which is fine. I don't know that we need another week, my personal opinion. But again, what happens if we don't meet it, or we met 2 weeks and we put them on notice? Then we're going to say, well, we didn't meet it this week. We're going to have to just be really good at that communication so parents understand.
Is that enough time? I'm assuming that some parents might be going to utilize, if we have the LEAP, is that enough time for you to have that set up and that staffed?
Well, we've been operating that we would have to rapidly shift. So, Mr. Nuttall, are you wanting to weigh in?
I don't necessarily need to. The answer to the question, though, would be yes, they are prepared to pivot. The communication has gone out to LEAP staff or LEAP registrants, if you will. We're fully booked out based off of all of the social distancing requirements, which would put us in that moderate level. Anyhow, we're ready to do that. They're prepared to do that. What we're doing right now is just extending the summer camp to provide as many opportunities for those parents that need that during the daytime. We extended it through the 17th, and we're prepared this week to extend it, based off of some decisions tonight as well.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that if parents needed care, that would be enough time for them to sign their child up for LEAP and get them enrolled. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
So I think we are prepared, given that if looking at a start of 1 week later, for the 27th, I think that is ample time for us to rebuild schedules, start to communicate to families what to expect. I think from the district side, we had all the signage and the preparation for preparing our sites for in-person. We've done that heavy lift already. The heavy lift that remains would be doing a different type of schedule and a different plan for transportation with different kids. What you have proposed as the soonest date possible, the 27th, that is ample time for us to complete that and support our children and families.
Okay, anyone have anything else? Hearing none. Kathy, or can I get a motion for item 5.4?
How are we going to word this? I would love to make a motion. I'm just not sure exactly how to say it.
So we're okay with the Maricopa County data benchmarks that they have. And what I heard was a in-person school start date of the 27th. Is that what I heard from you, Dr. Schaff? No?
No,
What?
that we would use the Maricopa County data matched up against the we'd use the Arizona Health Services benchmarks using the Maricopa County data to determine if we met the moderate threshold or better, moderate or minimal threshold in 3 of the areas. And once we hit 3 of the areas at the moderate or minimal, then we would begin our hybrid approach, phased approach to in-person learning 1 week after that. So by leaving it open-ended, it's whenever that benchmark hits, whenever we hit all 3 benchmarks, 1 week later, we would be opening without coming back to the governing board. That's what I thought I was understanding.
I didn't realize we agreed upon the 1 week. I thought it was the following Monday, but that's fine.
Go ahead, Jamie.
All right, so we're ready to make a motion then? Okay. I make a motion that we begin the hybrid approach 1 week after the Arizona Health Service benchmarks for moderate or better threshold are met. How was that? Okay.
And a second?
A second.
All those in favor? Kathy?
Nay.
Suzanne?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Nay.
Jamie?
Aye.
I am also a nay. Show that it did not pass, and it was 3-2. Would anyone who was a nay like to explain themselves? So I'll explain myself is that I feel that we are lumping all school districts into one bucket. This valley is very diverse in the geography of it. And what's good for downtown Phoenix is not good for Buckeye. And that's based off of some of the statistics that I've shown. And unfortunately, the lack of statistics don't make this decision any easier. So moving forward to item 5.5, discussion review Arizona School Board Association Policy Advisory number 672 regulation GBGB-R staff personnel security and safety, number 674 regulation JICA-RB student dress, number 676 regulation KIRB visitors to school cloth face coverings. Dr. Schuff.
Mr. Nuttall, are you prepared to take this one for me now?
I can give it a shot.
Okay.
Well, members of the governing board, Dr. Schuff, President Aguirre, district administration is recommending some policy advisories that were recently put out by ASBA specific to the most recent legislation on face coverings, et cetera. It was particular interest to address the hot topic of face coverings. And so we worked with our attorney to implement the ASBA required face coverings component and brought that into dress code. I know that we had that conversation prior to about ensuring that it was part of dress code. We did make some of those changes in particular to how face coverings apply to dress code earlier, but now there is a regulation to support the requirement of face coverings. We also wanted to ensure that it was brought into the realm of our staff to ensure their personal security and safety as well. So this regulation covers the policy advisory regulation recommended by our attorneys and ASBA are placed in here as well. So that's what we're recommending.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do. So I got caught up on a couple of words, Mr. Nuttall, so I apologize. You said emergency legislation, was that, so we're saying this is a part of Arizona statute? Are we saying this is a part of the county ordinance? I'm a little confused.
Yes, that's a good question. Misspoke when I said emergency legislation. It is just based off of the Maricopa County executive order regarding face coverings that we have put in place, but we did not have necessarily a regulation. So ASBA put out a regulation specific to match all of those components for the face coverings piece. So that's what we're talking about here this evening.
Is there a reason we don't have language in the actual policies that say they are only, it's only as long as this executive order is in place?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question exactly.
You don't know the reason?
I would guess that when the benchmarks are met, like as was described earlier, when we're in all green, that we're still required to do those 4 boxes, which do not include the social distancing components, face coverings, and all of the other protocols that we've put in place. So my assumption here, I apologize for assuming, but my assumption is that when face coverings are required via executive order and recommendations from the organizations that we've been relying upon all throughout this process are in place, then the regulation then would be in effect.
So if those go away, but our regulation still exists,
Our
are we
regulation
gonna?
is administrative, so we have the ability to adjust regulation as needed. So if the executive order changes, if Maricopa County changes, and those, you know, as Mr. Nuttall said, to meeting the minimal threshold, we have the ability to change regulation.
So you wouldn't have to wait for the board to approve to remove these as a requirement to the student, and we're confident in that.
Correct. Our regulation.
I struggle with there not being that language in there, so that it's very clear that can be changed. I'm a little iffy on it. So
Yeah, well, this is information as it came through ASBA. There's nothing that would prevent us from saying when we hit Arizona Health Services benchmarks for minimal, their none to minimal green category, we could add that as information saying that they are no longer required. And at that time, essentially, we would also take it out administratively out of regulation. But that would give the public and our staff knowledge of that intention up front.
I just think that's a little clearer for those that maybe already struggle with wearing the mask. I think
insight.
Anyone else? Okay. Moving forward, item 5.6, discussion and consideration to adopt board resolution.
So, Mr. Guire, members of the board, our attorneys have recommended that we basically nicely bundle and package up all of the requirements of the executive order. I think that does a couple of things. It just summarizes it cleanly, how we have complied, and shares out to the public some of the things that we intend to do. Some of the things that are in this, we have already complied with, and some of the things are in the works of a plan to do so. There are a couple of items towards the end that are not requirements of the executive order. They just came with our attorney's recommendation to just support the ongoing administration and the ability to respond to things that may change very rapidly in between board meetings. So if for those, I think if you have those in particular, you can have the opportunity to change or suggest anything else. For those, if you have some different language that would make you more comfortable in some way, suggest that. If something is not in your interest, some of those optional items, we could also amend the motion to change or delete some of those as well. So I just leave it for you and for your discussion and conversation.
Yolanda, your thoughts?
I'm fine with it.
Suzanne?
No comment. No comment.
Jamie?
I have no discrepancies with it.
Kathy?
I have a concern about the ones that aren't a part of the executive order, but there's no reason. No one else has any discrepancies, so that's just mine.
Okay, if I could, can I get a motion to approve item 5.6?
Make a motion to adopt board resolution. Would that be accurate?
And a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Jamie?
Aye.
Kathy?
Nay.
Suzanne?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
I am also an aye, so that it approved 4-1. Item number 5.7, discussion and consideration to approve SEI teacher job description. Mr. Nuttall.
Mr. Aguirre, members of the board, in order to better meet the needs of Arizona's English learners, ADE revised some instructional models and targeted instruction times. We earlier in the year applied for grant funds to get some additional staffing to assist with this implementation of the targeted instruction. We were awarded $43,807 to be exact in the grant to be used towards the salary for the cost of that SEI teacher. What we're seeking approval for tonight is the SEI teacher job description. And it's imperative to note that this position, while being a grant-funded position, will continue contingent upon continued receipt of said grant. So we're looking to see if we can't get that person, the job description approved this evening, and then move forward with that position.
Questions? Hearing none, if I could have a motion for item 5.7, please.
Make a motion to approve the SEI teacher job description.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Yolanda?
Aye.
Suzanne?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Jamie?
Aye.
I am also an aye, show that it approved unanimously. Item 5.8, discussion and consideration to approve job description for technology support specialist. Mr. Nuttall.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. As was mentioned earlier this evening, the technology team has risen well above the call of duty here so far. And what we've recognized through this process is the need for some additional support with technology. We don't see the technology needs going away. We actually see them continuing to increase regardless of the situation and the choices that parents make for whatever option is available to them. Some of the things that they've been working on so far and this person would support with would be implementation of continued distance learning, the online school and Edgenuity implementation, support in that areas, multiple applications for virtual learning and interaction support with parents and staff and continuing along those lines. We've also replaced 300 devices for our teachers as well. And so it is required for some additional assistance for imaging and implementation for those new devices, as well as additional and continued supports for students with their current needs as well. We also anticipate some shifts in enrollment between Liberty Online School and distance learning at some point in time, or in-person learning. We just need some additional support from that. The funding will be requested through DEMA, and if approved, 75% of that salary and benefits will be reimbursed to the district. What we wanted to try and do was place this on kind of within the realm of our strategic plan to provide some succession planning with our field techs and support in this position here. So we've initially placed that position on level 7 of the governing board approved support staff wage schedule, which starts them at a range between $14.92 and $15.75. And so it is a budget impact, somewhere between $37,000 and $39,000 and some change. But again, 75% of that we would hope in this particular time would be reimbursed. So we're seeking approval of this particular job description as well.
Anyone have any questions?
The only question is the 75%, is that only salary, not including the employee related cost?
I believe it's both. It's
okay, all right.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure you had it broke out without the employee costs. I wasn't sure where the 75% was covering. So it says salary and benefits. Never mind. I just didn't see benefits.
Anyone else? Hearing none, if I could, can I get a motion to approve item 5.8, please?
I make a motion to approve the job description for technology support specialist.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Jamie?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Suzanne?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
I am also an aye. Show that it approved unanimously. Item 5.9, discussion of Liberty Elementary School District Strategic Plan. Dr. Schuff.
Mr. Guire, members of the board, provided in the packet is our current LESD strategic plan, and with conversation with our cabinet members, administrators, and governing board and our studies, our board retreat, just identified some additional areas that need to be of particular focus added to our strategic plan. They are listed, so the changes you see are listed in the executive summary: 2 for strategic leadership, 2 for high expectations for learning, 2 for stewardship of resources, and no change to community connections. So I just invite the board for questions or comments if you would like us to adjust that in some way.
Go ahead and open it up. Anyone have anything they'd like to discuss on this? Okay, hearing none, moving on. Item 5.10, discussion and review regulation JR-R student records. Dr. Schiff.
For our student records, we have reviewed the information, the discussion from our prior governing board meeting, and some of the input we received, and so took another look at that. Mr. Nuttall had involved in conversations with our attorney and came back with what we believe is a good adjustment. And Mr. Nuttall, would you like to add anything else to that information for our governing board? Basically, it's our directory information is where we place this for the photo, video, signature release.
Sure, I can just add some commentary to this. If you'll recall from last board meeting, on the actual acknowledgement, verifications, and opt-out form, we had included a separate component for social media pieces. After review and feedback from the board, we revisited that with our attorney. And what we're talking about here is in the directory information specific to students' images as they pertain to school-sponsored social media. And I want to be clear on school-sponsored social media. So it's an opt-out for school-sponsored social media, including Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and any other social media that I haven't discovered yet. So those are, that is an additional sentence that is placed into the regulation for policy JRR.
Anyone have anything? And we're looking for action on this evening, correct, Dr. Schiff?
Because this is a regulation, again, as a courtesy, we bring regulation to the board, so you're fully aware of all the information that we have. So this isn't a policy, this is a regulation, but we'd like to get your input.
Sounds like everyone's good with it.
Okay.
Item number 6, 6.1, board comments or agenda topic requests. Does anyone have anything? I know, Suzanne, we have yours coming up, I believe, at the next board meeting.
The political agenda?
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Guire, I would recommend that we bring back some review of the information around benchmarks, and I can do that in 2 separate items or a single item at the board's discretion. If you'd like to have a separate item just to review of benchmarks, or if you think we are all on board with that and we only just need to review our current data against the benchmarks, to have some conversation about when it would be appropriate to return to school in person for our hybrid, and then later, at a later date, when we're in the green for minimal, how we would return for all children.
To be honest, Dr. Schiff, I'm not sure, because on the nays, I didn't hear any other of reasons as to why there was nays for that. So my guess is as good as yours of, do we split it up or do we keep it together?
And that's why I said the 2 things, because I heard your comment saying that you had a concern about the benchmarks. What is the board's pleasure for bringing back agenda items?
I think maybe if you separate them out, maybe the best plan of action.
Okay.
Yolanda, do you have any input on that?
Like I said before, I'm nay because I don't want to do the moderate. So that's my nay.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and split them up, Dr. Schuff.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any requests? No? I have a request that I'd like to see about bringing back and reviewing and possibly updating and taking action on the Teachers Advisory Council procedures and elections and nominations on how that works for not only teachers, but I thought that we had support staff that had a speaker also at one point a while back when we were having regular board meetings. So if we could, I'd like to go ahead and look at those two things.
So let me just make sure I'm understanding clearly. You would like to have information on how the teacher advisory groups do the selection of their participants?
How they're nominated.
Okay.
How they're voted on, right?
Yep.
And possibly take action to change it.
So currently they are not an appointed board group. So by doing I'm fine with it, Mark. Please don't know. I just want to make sure you're aware.
We'll bring back information. I don't want to get off agenda topic. I'll be careful there. We can bring back information about how they are, how they're formed, all the information around that. So we can do that.
Can you include the difference between a board appointed or observed or recognized group versus
in that
administrative? Yeah, the differences between the two?
Absolutely.
So upcoming board meetings, we have August 31st, regular board meeting, September 8th, groundbreaking. I would imagine here pretty quick that Ms. Lupita is going to want to know who's going to be attending the groundbreaking. That way she can put notice out. And then also September 14th, regular board meeting. Does anyone have any changes to that at all they'd like to see? Hearing none. Item 8. Adjournment of the board meeting. If I could get a motion.
Mr. Aguirre.
We have a consent agenda.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yes, we do. I apologize.
Sorry, Lupita,
Thank you, Kathy.
Didn't we have something pulled from the consent?
Yes, we do. I apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself. That was item
4.7.
So 4.7.
I just have a couple of questions. It's nothing major. Is that the second teacher resignation with the signed contract? Do you have that number?
I do. That's the third since June.
The third since June. There were signing bonuses involved, and that's paid out already, correct?
That is not paid out.
Okay.
That's an error in that.
Okay.
What happened was the resignation came back after that was posted. And so we can very easily go back in and make that correction for the resignation that occurred. Yes.
Yeah, I was just, I was a little confused when I saw that. And then this is that position, I am assuming, is a hard to fill position or harder to fill position at this late state in the game. And we have no recourse because there's no language in the teacher contract, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That's all I needed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if we could I have a motion to approve item 4.7 under the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve 4.7 approval of personnel action items.
And a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Jamie?
Aye.
Kathy?
I think you said Kathy, but aye.
Suzanne?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
I am also an aye, show that it approved unanimously. Item number 8, adjournment of the meeting. If we could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Make a motion to adjourn tonight's board meeting.
I second.
All those in favor? Jamie?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Suzanne?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
I am also an aye, show that the meeting adjourned at 10:05 p.m. Thank you, everyone.